Hello, you guys. Good to see you. I am Kenny, also known as psyguy, or am I? Used to be known as Silent Fan 85, but that's going back a bit, so we're not going to do that. Um, this will probably be one of the most boring reaction videos ever. I was going to game stream tonight, but I wanted to chill out. My back is killing me. I injured it this weekend. So what we're doing is we're watching the most boring video ever made. This does have ASMR quality, um, so we'll see. I've also got some facts up. This is talking about old school word processing, probably early 80s, give or take. Um, so it's going to be interesting. So bear with me. We're going to jump in. You'll find chapters down below um, at some point, and then we'll get started. Um, Essentially, what this is talking about word processing, word publishing, all kinds of stuff. I actually just texted Lady Psylocke that I'm going to stream this. She watched a little bit of it. She actually is more knowledgeable about it than I am because of her career. I've worked with word processing, with some web design, with certain things back in the day, but pretty limited. I know a good bit of the technical jargon he talks about in here. There's not going to be any music videos. I'm going to avoid copyright on that or music, excuse me. But it's going to be boring. It is going to be real boring. So if if I get some dislikes, so be it. I haven't done a stream like this in a while. It's just a very weird stream, and we're about to jump in. I'm going to have captions on, although I am blocking them a bit. Um, I did a little bit of research. This is a pretty safe video to do stuff with. Talk about, chill out, see what pops up, go from there. Um, but I don't know what playlist I'll put this on. I have no idea. I wish I knew. I don't. Yeah, mm. I guess I can do. I'll put another reactions playlist, and then there's no AI. I'm not using an AI thumbnail for this. Camera's freezing. Um, we'll do this under. Why don't we science and technology be the that'll be the video reaction. So, all right. Now I look a little rough. I just got home a little bit ago. Happy Father's Day, by the way, as of this recording to anybody that is a father. Um, like I said, I injured my back this weekend, which is not fun, but I'm in recovery. I've been kind of drugged up the last 24 hours. Got back from CC's with my folks. It was just us three, and they had a good time. They're trying to quit smoking, so they're having a rough time with that. It's been an uphill battle to say the least, but they're pushing through. I'm proud of them. So, all right, let me get chat up and going because I can't see it, not as of right now. And then we will. Hey, Spiky, I've been tired all day. I dig it. I might have to adjust the audio, so bear with me. This is, like I said, a last minute thing, but we're gonna be here for a couple hours and chilling, chatting, watching the video. Where did it go? Pop out. There we go. Okay. Let's close that. And let me see where we're at with the volume. volume here. With that, oh, wrong one. Let's
Hello, and welcome to Mac Academy. My name is Randy Smith, and over the next couple of hours, we'll be discussing Microsoft Word. We'll be going over the basics of that program.
Randy
I'd like
Smith.
to welcome each of you to this tape and also to the Mac Academy organization. I'd like to spend, before we dig right into the program, I'd like to spend a few
Just
minutes
writing.
and talk
That's how
about
you go
some of
live.
the
Oh, cool, man.
differences
Appreciate you
between
popping in.
word processing on the Macintosh computer, word processing perhaps that you're used to on IBMs and IBM compatibles, or some of the earlier programs for the Macintosh.
Oh man, look
You
at
know,
this video
today a lot of
quality.
people talk about word processing, and they also talk a lot about desktop publishing. One of the first things that you need to realize is that there is
People
a
barely
major
talk about it
difference
anymore.
between word processing and desktop publishing. I know you'll go down to your
There's
local
a big
Apple
difference.
dealer or one of your software stores, and they'll try and convince you that all you need to buy is one program. For example, if you buy PageMaker, you don't need to buy a word processing program. Or if you buy the all-new Word 4.0, then you won't need to go buy a desktop publishing program because it does everything.
Dude said Word 4.0. That's crazy. So he's obviously outlining. Yeah, he does. It kind of looks like AI, doesn't it? It's funny because um, he's got the same facial structure as my boss, like the main CEO of the company I work for. And I don't know, man. I guess some of the more successful people they look like that. Who knows?
A lot of people don't understand the difference between the two types of programs, and so I'd like to talk about that just
I
for
do.
a moment, and I'd also like to talk about word processing and how to get the most out of it, and then we'll dig right into the program.
And to be honest, some of these terms are becoming a bit outdated. Word processor, publishing, especially with the rise of AI, because it's basically going to do everything. And but there's still going to be a lot of old school folks that are going to prefer to do it their own way. Um, that way they can do how they want.
First of all, when it comes to word processing and desktop publishing, a good way, I guess, to understand the difference is an experience that I had. I worked at a newspaper for 5 years. I used to come in and I'd sit down at one of those old-fashioned Royal manual typewriters. And whether I was doing a story or an article or an advertisement, I'd sit down at that typewriter and I'd type away.
Lizard
And when I
person.
finished, I'd take that hard copy back to the production department. Now, in those days, someone would sit down at a photo typesetting machine and they would type out everything that I had laid out on a nice piece of paper. Now, the word
Wow.
processing part, that was the part of sitting there getting the words on the paper, kind of the creative part, the part where the creative juices are flowing. And then the production department, they would take that document and they would lay it out, and they would set out columns, and they'd put lines between the columns, and they would do headlines. They would take graphics or photos with subheads or sidebars, and they would make your article or your ad look the way that you wanted it to look.
We actually, Lady Selick and I watched the movie The Post the other night, and it talks about the Washington Post and the Pentagon Papers regarding Nixon, and 4 different administrations covering up Vietnam being a total fucking failure. Kind of relevant nowadays, but and there was a part where the editor was going through and marking, and Lady Selick was giving me insight into like what each mark means because her career, she's an editor, and it's really interesting because that was old school. Like that was physical paper. Um, and here he's kind of talking about the same thing, especially typesetting. Um, and so it's going to be interesting to see like how this aged and go from there. I am going to have ignorance, but um, yeah, we'll see how it goes.
That's kind of the difference between word processing and desktop publishing. I was doing the word processing part, they were doing the desktop publishing part. Now today we have some wonderful electronic desktop publishing programs that take all the hard parts and all the laborious steps that it used to take us to get our document to look just like we wanted it to look, and they've taken all the work out of that.
They've nowadays taken all the work even out of doing that. Like it's nuts. I mean, Spikey's talking about writing. It's it's crazy. I don't know, dude. I wish I could tell you. I can't tell you. I don't even think the camera can tell you.
there are many good ones out there. PageMaker is one that we use, Ready, Set, Go, Quark Express, all of those are excellent. And the recommendation I'd like to make to you is if you are professionally in the business of doing brochures or doing reports or doing anything other than just standard 8.5 by 11 documents, I would suggest that you get both a professional word processing program and a desktop publishing program. Sure, we can make Word, and we will be doing that in our advanced tape. We'll show you how to do side-by-side columns,
So
and
this
we'll show you how to take
this
a
was
graphic
a
and put it into
VHS
your document, and we'll show you how to wrap copy around that.
Macademy
But it is extremely difficult. It takes a long time. Whereas in a desktop publishing program, with a
VHS
push
set.
of 1 or 2 buttons, you can do exactly you can accomplish the same task. So please understand there is a difference in that you need both. When it comes to word processing, and word processing, as I mentioned, is the function of getting all of your thoughts, your words, copy that perhaps is going to sell or make someone interested in your business, getting that all down on paper. And there are a lot of good programs out there. The Macintosh did not invent word processing. I almost wish it did, but the first
IBM
word processor that I ever used was a program called WordStar on an IBM program. And I
called it.
kind of get a kick out of IBM people who make the comment that the Macintosh screen is too small.
One of the very first computers I ever interacted with was a small portable IBM with the um, uh, green font, black background. DOS. I think it was kind of DOS like, but you put in commands. There was a very simple, very simple, basic text adventure that was very limited that I played that an uncle had, and I remember the clickety clack of the keyboard, man. Like it's kind of like the keyboard I have now, but it was so sturdy, and the thing was freaking heavy. But that reminds me of this. The screen was literally probably not even 320p resolution. Had to have been maybe 240, if that. And it was small, like literally about that big. It was about the size of my head, if not smaller. It was crazy.
Well, I remember on WordStar, the entire top third of my screen was a menu bar, and that menu bar was just to show me all the commands, all the key commands that I
There are
had to
some
remember
people, their
to do
Chrome,
simple functions in the
their
word processing
bookmark bar
program.
is like
And so they have a
four or
lot of
five
great
lines
programs
thick.
for
It
the
drives me
IBM and
nuts.
the
I don't see how
IBM
people do it.
compatibles, WordStar, WordPerfect. First program that came out for the Macintosh was a little program called McWrite. Many of you may remember that. It came with the machine. And for years, we went a long time without a word processing program
Lady
because
Hawkins
everyone
actually
felt, well, they've
mentioned
already
she
got one. The Mac owners, they
used
don't need another
McWrite
one.
or
And then
some variation
Microsoft
of it.
came out with Microsoft Word, and they found out that, yes, us Mac owners would go buy another program. Today, we have a myriad of programs. We have WordPerfect for the Macintosh. We have WordStar is now available for the Macintosh.
All right,
Full
dude.
Write
See you later,
Professional
Spikey.
right now. There are a lot of excellent programs. Hopefully you have bought the Word program. That's why you've got it. I recommend it. It is the one we use. It does everything that we need it to do. So there are a lot of word processing programs out there. Since you're using Word and since you're using the Macintosh, I would recommend that you find out what this program is best at and use that to its fullest capacity or capability.
Good recommendation.
So we're going to be looking at the capabilities of Word as we go through the program this morning. Another little caution, I guess, that I want to make. You know,
All right.
I've seen a
Yeah,
lot of word
I'll probably
processors,
still
and
be
if you
here.
want to get really archaic, the first word processor that I ever saw, and this is going to make me sound kind of old, was a linotype machine. Linotype machine, you'd hit a key, it'd go up into this great big machine, it would find a metal ingot that had the letter, and that would come flying down the tracks, and they'd put some ink on it and hit the paper. It was very slow, it was very expensive, it was very noisy.
If I'm right, I think that kind of um, the word totally leaves me mechanical writing was actually what they were using in the Post. And the Post was 1974, I think, is when the Pentagon Papers, the whole thing happened. And then, of course, right after that was the whole Watergate scandal, which is always fun. Um, but yes, I could be right on that.
And also you had to make all your mistakes on the paper before you could go back and correct them, and that was very difficult. Then we went into kind of the stage of the IBM Selectric, I guess the era of the IBM Selectric. Some of you may still have been in that recently. And the exciting thing about the IBM Selectric was for the first time you could hit a key like an L, and you could get something different than the last time you hit the key by changing the little element in your typewriter. For the first time we could get bold, we could get italics, we could change type fonts and get Bodini or some other type font, and that was exciting. We used to line all the little elements up. but we were still forced to make the errors on the page before, or we had to print it, we had to make the errors on the page before we could make the correction. And you may
Huh.
remember some of the ways that we used to make the corrections. I don't know if you're old enough to remember the little white pieces of paper that we used to string all over our desk, and we'd cram those down in the typewriter and try and get the letter to hit right where it hit before to correct it.
So they would have to overwrite the error. They'd have to try to line it up. Um, okay. What he's talking about with the IBM Selectric, obviously dated, introduced by IBM on July 31st, 1961. Wildly successful, dominating the electric office typewriter market and holding 94% of the market share by 1978. I've used a few typewriters. Honestly, I always kind of found them relaxing, like the change, change. It's and I remember having to load it because my my grandfolks had one where you'd put it in, you'd have to adjust the paper, um, and one related note, I could be wrong, and she might watch this later, but Lady Salak actually had or has um, an older typewriter that she used. I think it was like I mentioned it once. It was like one she found or one she wanted for a while, and it was something like that. So this electric utilizes a spinning and tilting spherical type element, often affectionately and primitively called a golf ball. When a key was pressed, the sphere itself would zip across the paper to imprint the character, completely eliminating the need for a clunky sliding carriage. So I'm not sure I've ever used one of these, but the one I used was where the typer, I guess, because I can't think right now, did go along like a railing, and it would move, and then when it would reset, it would slide back over, so on and so forth. So I don't think I've ever used a Selectric, but like he's saying, it did allow for fly swapping fonts, italics, and even different languages. Apparently, that's crazy.
Then we went into a great era after that, a nice new product. In fact, the singing group, the Monkees, went around here not too long ago. You may have noticed there were only 3 of them instead of 4. Michael Nesmith was the 4th member, and he did not tour. Reason he did not tour is that his mother invented whiteout, and he inherited about $43 million and didn't need to sing anymore.
Wait, what? Hold on. This was something. Randy points out that Michael Nesmith from the band The Monkees skipped a reunion tour because his mother invented whiteout. He apparently inherited $43 million from the Correction Fluid Empire and decided he didn't need to sing anymore. Wow, that's crazy. I used whiteout a good bit, especially when I was working on fan fiction back in the day, right around the time of Diablo 1, I think, give or take. But I had a whiteout pen though, the one that it had like a strip that curved around, and it acted like a bit of tape, and you could just mark it out and mark it out. Um, I rarely ever used the actual paint, but I will say I did find it comforting in a weird way because of the way the paint sat on the brush and it would glide across the paper. The only problem I had with the paint was that it would chip, and it kind of drove me nuts. But if you did it right, it really did work well on the paper.
Wasn't whiteout a great invention? In fact, I remember just sitting back with that and just painting all over our page, and we get these big lumps where the whiteout got a little too heavy.
Yeah,
But for
like
those of
that.
us that had to do legal documents or contracts, we couldn't go through and white out our mistakes. And
Yeah.
so then the real word processing came along, and the reason I go through all this is to drive home the point that the word processor allows us to make all of our errors on the screen before we put them on the page. And I still know a lot of people who, using a word processing program, Word or anyone, they'll go through, do their entire document, print out a copy, and then sit down and start correcting all their errors.
Oh, wow. The redundancy. So they would type it up, print it, any errors, they go through, white it out, and then retype it. That's what I mean. So what you're seeing is a very selective habit, adapted habit from that generation of work flowing over to the current generation as they get used to it. And then as you go along, you'll kind of pick it up again. It's 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 crazy. What comes to mind with that is I would say cursive writing. As I was growing up, cursive writing was a thing. You're not going to see it a whole lot, except for maybe signatures. But even signatures, I think, are kind of going the way of the dodo because you're getting thumbprints, you're getting handprints, eye scans, all kinds of stuff. Um, but there was script, cursive writing, which was a big thing, and you're not really seeing that a whole lot. So that's probably, I don't know, kind of a relevant thing.
If you're going to do that, then you might as well use a typewriter because you've got a very expensive typewriter sitting here.
True.
So the first step to using a word processing program, anyone, is to plan out in advance what you want your document to look like. Take a minute, take a piece of paper and a pencil, and just simply sketch out what you'd like it to look like when it's finished. Are you going to have headlines? Are you going to have footnotes? Are you going to have headers or footers? Are you going to have one column or two or three? And you will save a tremendous amount of time when you sit down with your program to make that document on the screen look like you want it to look like when it's printed. Second area is go through all the different regimens that we have to make corrections before you print it out. So now we're here with the Apple Macintosh, and we've got a brand new program, Word 4.0. It's got a lot of nice new features, and we want to go through some of those today. Before I go right into that, let me just go through some definitions because I want to make sure that I don't use any words in this tutorial that you perhaps are not familiar with. So let me go through each of these definitions very quickly. First of all, when you measure type, when you measure copy, and you're seeing how wide it is, you'll have options as to how to measure that. One option that a lot of printers like to use, a lot of photo typesetters like to use, and a lot of the new programs are allowing you to use, is a measurement called picas,
Picus.
P-I-C-A-S. A pica, there are 6 picas per inch. So all you need to do is measure your copy in inches, divide it by 6, and that'll tell you how many picas wide the width of your copy is.
Never heard of it.
The next thing we like to measure is the height of our copy. How tall is it from the very top of the tallest letter all the way down to the bottom of the lowest ascender that we have in our copy? And that is measured in points, P-O-I-N-T-S.
Points I've
Points,
heard
and
of.
you'll notice that Microsoft Word gives you the option of choosing how many points or how high you would like your letters.
Now that I think about it, though, I think that picas may still be a thing in the measurement of documents, especially within Microsoft Word. Although I tend to think of it as length, width, and height. I don't really go for the general term. So I guess that's why he's pointing this out, is because not a whole lot of people know about it. So it makes sense.
Best way to remember that is that there are 72 points in an inch. So if you select 72 points for your copy, you will get letters that are 1 inch tall. If you choose 36 point, they'll be ½ inch tall, and 18 point, ¼ inch tall. Is there any copy that's larger than 72 point? Yes, there is. The days that I worked at the newspaper, we had 344 point type, I remember. We used to call that second coming type. I guess that's the time that we were going to use that.
Wow. So 344 point type size that they refer to as second coming, basically a font size reserved only for the end of the world. So I guess they mean like headline wise, like you would probably ever rarely use it, but unless it was like a huge headline, like "End of the world is nigh" or something like that, like on the top of a newspaper. I wonder how high. I'll look into it, but I'm gonna see if 344 is still the biggest point type size, and then we'll verify.
And you'll notice that sometimes when you get very large copy, it'll look really good when it's printed, and sometimes when you go up in size, up to 72 or 90 point type, it won't look very good, and there's a reason for that, and I'll be explaining to you how to make your copy always look good, no matter what size you go up in. So that's points. A couple other terms. Default. We're going to talk about the default setting on the computer. Default simply means that the
Should
computer
be
has a lot of
straightforward.
settings built in. If you open up Word, most likely it will start in Geneva. It might start in 10 point or 12 point. All of those are default settings. It's already set your margins at 0 and 6 inches.
It's been my experience that the default nowadays tends to be 16, maybe 12 or 16. Where I work, I tend to use 16 for my clients, mostly in emails, not a whole lot of printed documents. But yeah, okay. So 344 is not the biggest anymore. Microsoft Word, the biggest you can go is a maximum of 1,638 points. Microsoft PowerPoint, 3,600 points, and Microsoft Excel caps out at 409 points. I think Word is going to be the biggest. Oh, PowerPoint will be the biggest. Um, there is Adobe, but that goes 1,200 points.
It has set your top margin at 1 inch, your bottom margin at 1 inch, a half inch on either side. Those are all default settings, and you can change those, and we'll go into how to change each of those default settings later on in the tape. Next term is word wrapping. Word wrapping simply means that when you get to the end of a line of type in Word, it will automatically go to the next line without you hitting a carriage return. I'm sure you're familiar with this.
When he's saying carriage return, it means enter, like going down, kind of old school. Word wrap still around. Um, most of the stuff I work with automatically word wraps. Like there's no uh, option to turn it off or on with the tools I use in my job. The only thing it ever really comes up on is Notepad, and yeah, so that work related, that's where it falls for me. Hey, random, how are you? Welcome to a very um, potentially boring stream, although I'm actually kind of interested. Surprising.
If you've used a word processor. The only reason I bring this point up here is that in Microsoft Word, if you do a carriage return, if you reach down and hit the return on your keyboard, you automatically tell Word this is a brand new paragraph, even if it isn't a new paragraph. So remember, whenever you do a manual carriage return, you are telling the machine, you're telling the program, this is a new paragraph. Next term, reverse type. Reverse type simply means white letters on a black background
Didn't
versus
know that.
black letters on a white background. We use this a lot to draw attention to a certain copy block. There's a few rules when using a PageMaker, for example, allows you to do reverse type. There's a few rules when using reverse type. First of all, never use it smaller than 18 point. Also, never put it in long copy blocks. And the reason is it's very difficult to read.
Okay, I see what he's saying. It's a lot easier to read white on black than or black on white than it is white on black. See, for me, it's the opposite though. It's like it's easier for me to read white letters on a black background than black letters on a white background. But then again, that's probably how I'm set up mentally.
I have found that it's best to use reverse type in a headline or perhaps a price that is very large, one block that'll say $49 or $249. Reverse type shows up and stands out very much when you use it in that way. Okay, the last thing that I'd like to mention, actually the last two items as far as definitions. One is leading,
Oh,
L-E-A-D-I-N-G, and this comes back from the good old line of type days. When they wanted to separate a line of copy from another line of copy, they used to put a little strip of lead in between those two.
really?
Leading is simply the spacing in between your lines. And a lot of the new programs, including Word, will allow you now to adjust that space, and that is called adjusting the leading. In PageMaker, for example, you
Okay, so I was talking about like single space, double space. Back in school, whenever you do reports, some classes allowed you to double space, others didn't. You had a single space. I used to always do double space, even if they had let me. There were times I had to retype it, but I don't know. I guess I was kind of a favored student back in the day, so the teacher let me get away with it sometimes, mostly English, sometimes in science, especially if it was a science experiment we had to do at home, write up a report. What did I notice? What did I do? How did I pull it off? That kind of thing. Um, I'm surprisingly engaged with this. It's crazy because we're looking at the generational stuff as opposed to now, and even today, stuff we do is becoming obsolete because of AI. But with that said, AI is not perfect, so I don't know. We'll see.
You can set that. You can have 10-point type on 11-point leading, which will give you 1 point of space in between the two lines.
No, okay.
So that is another term. The last term is font, type font.
Easy
Now
enough.
in Microsoft Word, you are allowed to set the font that you want to use. And again, if we're going to use the Macintosh, let's use it to its fullest capacity. A Macintosh computer will do basically 80% of what a $40,000 photo typesetting machine will do. And mainly what that does is allow you to select your type fonts, your type styles, and your type sizes. It allows you to create any look that you would like with your copy. So type font is very important. Now type font, as I mentioned, is a type style. If I had you sit down and write out a line of copy with handwritten, yours would be a little different than mine. It'd be the same letters, the same words, but a little different style.
Yeah,
Right now
that
there are
makes
over
sense.
5,000 type fonts available for the Macintosh computer.
What?
Your computer will hold, without changing some of your software, up to 200 of these type fonts.
Dude, even back in the day, they had over 5,000. Ain't that some shit? Da, da, da. Helvetica Supremacy. The most famous and widely used font in the world is Helvetica, which was created in 1957 by the Swiss designer Max Meidinger. Its original, much less catchy name was Neuhaus Grotesque. It was later renamed Helvetica, derived from Helvetia, the Latin name from Switzerland, to make it more marketable internationally. That makes sense. Um, you can largely thank Steve Jobs for the variety of fonts on modern computers. After dropping out of college, he audited a calligraphy class at Reed College. Years later, he insisted that the very first Microsoft computer featured beautiful, proportionally spaced typography. The hardware revolution forced competitors like Microsoft to follow suit, changing digital word processing forever. Wow, that's it. It's crazy. Um, just it's nuts. I'm actually checking. So, whoa. Right now, grand total, when you factor in all the independent foundries, custom corporate typebases, free font databases, modern estimates suggest there are anywhere from 160,000 to over 500,000 different fonts in existence. Back in '89, humans were amazed they could fit 200 fonts on a computer. Today, you could theoretically download 500,000 of them, though your machine would probably crash trying to load the font drop down menu in Word. That's crazy.
In my computer, I have 131. Of that 131, I basically use two. I
Uh,
think the other 129 are there to impress people at Mac Academies. But you will find that you can put an incredible amount of fonts into your computer, as I mentioned, up to 200.
I tend to favor. There's a Fat Boy font which I used to use a lot on the Silent Fan 85 design page at work. It's new type. Um, there's also the basic font. There's a universal font type, and one I used when I first started doing design banners for thumbnails and for the main page banners here on YouTube. What was the name of that? It was a type. It was a typography that looks like typewriter. It was a bit of an urban. Oh, I forget, but yeah, I used three or four of them.
So of all these 5,000 type fonts that are available out there, you can put those into three categories. There are three basic categories of type font. The first is called cursive or script. Now what that basically means is the type font that looks like calligraphy or looks like it was handwritten. Venice is the one that most of you have in your computer that's already built in.
Hmm.
A few rules when using cursive or script font. First of all, again, never use it smaller than 18 point. Don't use it in long copy blocks. Try not to ever make it bold or to italicize it or to underline it.
Yeah, that
And
looked weird.
especially don't ever use it in all caps. In fact, a general rule in all typography is to stay away from all caps. It's very difficult to read.
Tell that to all the old people on Facebook because a lot of I have a family member that types in all caps because it's hard for them to see. So when they're typing, they have to use all caps in order to see what they're typing. And a lot of them don't know how to zoom in, enlarge text, or whatever. So if you have an older person constantly typing in all caps, it's usually because they have poor eyesight or they're half blind. Well, which is poor eyesight, but you get what I'm saying.
Well, with cursive or script type, it is especially difficult to read. In fact, if you've seen some of the different uppercase letters in some of your different fonts, you might not even be able to recognize it. Almost looks like an oriental figure. So use those rules when using a cursive or a script type. The other two types of type font, there is serif and sans serif. Now, serif is the little line, the little extra line on the end of each of the letters. All the typography classes that I've attended and the
Oh
studies
yeah,
I've seen shows that serif type is easier to read than sans serif type.
I can see
Well,
that.
basically, the reason we're sitting down at our computers to make it so someone else will read it, and so it'll be easy to read. So I have found that serif type is a little more formal looking, and it is also easier to read. You will also find that it looks more like a typewriter type face.
Yeah,
And I find it kind of ironic. Here we all had typewriters, and we threw the typewriters away, and we all went out and spent thousands of dollars on a computer.
to use
And
the
then we
font.
try very hard to make our document look like it came off a typewriter.
That's kind of, again, that's kind of a generational adoption kind of thing because it, from what I've seen on current modern day websites, you really don't see that used a whole lot anymore. And if it is, it's usually to be kind of ironic or um, to really stand out and look old school. Um, but I haven't seen a whole lot of people use it, at least not lately.
Well, I have found that the most popular type fonts are the ones that look like a typewriter. It's a more personal look. Let me just suggest a few type fonts to you. If you are using a laser printer, if you have a laser printer, I would suggest Times. Times is an excellent type font. It is a serif type, which means it's easier to read. It looks like it came off a typewriter, and it is also very condensed, which
The camera just froze with me like laser printers. God. Okay, so I remember getting my first laser printer at a job I worked at, and what um Windows 98 second edition, or was it 95? It might have been 95. That operating system hated laser printers. You could not get it to sync for shit. Even if you use a cable to connect it, which you had to use a cable. I don't know why I'm talking about syncing. That was later, mostly with fax machines and corporate printers. Actually, it was kind of the first Bluetooth for the most part, but it directly connected mostly to identify, I think, on the corporate network, a Wi-Fi, so to speak. But it really wasn't internet based. It was more like interoffice network. Um, so there wasn't an outside connection, but there was an interoffice connection that um, had link points throughout the building that was wireless, old school. But yeah, laser printers were, man. There was also dot matrix printers, which I actually enjoyed because the paper, it was very loud and obnoxious, but when you got used to it, it was kind of comforting, especially if you worked around it a lot. And the way it tore away, like you could do it real slow, and it kind of had an ASMR quality. I also found it really fun because it had divoted on the side where you could kind of tear it down, and again, it had a tearaway quality. It was kind of cool. The camera froze. All right, random. I hope you have a good night, man. Sorry if you got bored.
means you can get a lot of letters in a very small amount of space. If you are not using a laser printer, I would suggest Geneva, Boston, or New York. Again, they fit that criteria. They are serif types. They look like they came off a typewriter. They're not quite as condensed as Times is, but they are excellent. You will find them in a lot of textbooks. A lot of newspapers use that type font. If you would like a sans serif type font, Helvetic is the one that I would suggest. It is a very
Yeah.
clean type font. Takes up a lot of space. In fact, I found a lot of textbooks use Helvetica, and I think it's because you can make a very small article look very long. A lot of people use that, and you'll find that in newspapers also. So Helvetic is an excellent type font. Many of you may have the experience of choosing a new type font on the Macintosh computer, and it looks great on the screen, and you go to print it out either on your laser writer or on your image writer, and for one of those two printers, it doesn't look very good. Look great on one of them, and then you'll go to the laser printer and it won't look good, or vice versa. Let me give you a little rule of thumb when choosing your typefaces so that you know which one will look good on a laser printer and which one will look good on an image writer.
Okay, so laser printers. I was trying to look it up. There was something I was going to say, but I totally forgot what it was. We'll carry on.
You'll notice that most of the type fonts are named after cities: Boston, New York, Geneva, Stuttgart. The basic rule of thumb, there are some exceptions, but basically if it is named after a city, it will look good on your image writer printer. If it is not named after a city, it is most likely a PostScript font, or it was designed to look good on a laser printer. So all of your Couriers, Times, Avant-Garde, Zap Dingbat, all of those different chubby, teeny, tiny, each of those different type fonts were designed to be run on a laser printer. So again, rule of thumb, if it's
I
named
didn't
after a
know
city,
that.
look good on your image writer. If it's not named after a city, it is most likely a PostScript font or a laser font, and it'll look good on your laser printer.
Did not know that, and that makes a lot of sense. There was one font that I never understood, and it was Wingdings. There's just a bunch of random objects. Um, it was crazy. So looking at it, I did a little. I had Gemini do a little bit of it. Windows ME actually is historically cited as one of the worst operating systems released by Microsoft, obviously, but Windows Vista is the most notorious operating system for printer and peripheral incompatibility. Um, so that, I guess, that kind of answers my question.
Okay, those are just some general terms, some general rules, some kind of general rules of thumb, and will help you a lot when planning your document. Now it's time that we turn to the computer. So what I have done is I've already opened up a document in Microsoft Word
Wow.
4.0. You'll see it's called Randy's Ready Reference. All you do is double click on the application, and you will get a blank piece of paper. Or if you have already done a document, as I have here, all you need to do is double click, and that will launch that application, and you'll be able to start working in that. So here we go. As you can see, this is a regular letter in Word, and I'm going to go through some of the pull-down menus.
Okay, little bit of, because I mentioned Wingding font back in the day. Um, Wingdings is technically classified as a dingbat font. In traditional printing, a dingbat was a decorative ornament or spacer used in typesetting. When the digital revolution hit, Microsoft needed a way to give users access to scalable graphics without melting their primitive hard drives. In the early 90s, image files like bitmaps were massive memory hogs. Computers simply didn't have the processing power or storage to handle inserting multiple pictures into a standard text document. Fonts, however, are mathematical vectors. They take up practically zero space. Wingdings um, were like apparently like some of the original emojis, sort of thing. Um, the font was originally created in 1990 by designers Charles Bigelow and Chris Holmes under the names Lucida Icons, Lucida Arrows, and Lucida Stars. Microsoft bought the rights, mashed them together, renamed the package Wingdings, and shipped it to Windows 3.1 in 1992. Uh, let's see. There was a lot that happened with them, but essentially Wingdings were an evolutionary prototype for the modern emoji. Um, Back then, it was entirely reliant on typing a lowercase q to draw a tiny pixelated mailbox. It's certainly come a long way. So I guess they didn't. The only time I saw it showing up was AOL chat whenever you would do like the emojis like the colon with the capital D for like a kind of look. Um, But I guess they were kind of doing the same thing with wingdings, is to my understanding.
The way to remember a pull-down menu is to kind of think back of the old blinds like your grandmother had. You
Huh?
used to reach up in the window and you'd pull that blind down. The exciting thing about the Macintosh and Microsoft is that as you pull down each of these menus, most of the words are in English. You'll recognize them. They're not some computer command. And I'm not going to go through each of the pull-down menus right now because we'll be using them in the next couple of hours, but I would like to spend a minute on the File menu. As I pull down the File menu, you'll notice some words that you'll recognize.
It's funny when you look at like stuff like this. You can see where Windows and Apple, they have this same design concept. I mean, you look at Android, right? Like for my phone, I have a Galaxy, and you put your finger up, pull it down. To me, what that reminds me of, because I worked in storage, um, and storage has roll-up garage doors, basically, and essentially that's what it looks like to me. It's like it's an up and down garage door, and to think about it, it's come a long way to have something like that portable, as compared to what we're seeing here, which has a bit of some real-world inspiration on how to design it, like Windows. So it's interesting.
There's new, open, close, save as, delete, on down to quit. You'll also notice opposite some of the commands there will be a little symbol that looks like a four-leaf clover and a letter. What this allows you to do, as Microsoft said, anytime you want to do a command, you have one of two choices. You can either use the mouse and pull down the menu and select one of the
Or
commands, or
shortcut
you can
keys.
simply use the keyboard. So whenever over to the right you see the little command symbol and a letter, that means if you hit Command N, it will do the same thing as selecting New. Command O opens a document. Now, new and open simply means new says I'd like a brand new piece of paper that I've never written on or never given a name to. Open says I would like to open a document that I have already named, that I've already used.
Okay, quick. I'm a bit late on this, but Lady Salak actually shared this with me the other night as we were watching it, and she pointed out that uppercase and lowercase letters. Um, in the early days of manual typesetting, individual metal letter blocks were stored in physical wooden drawers or cases. The capital letters, which were used less frequently, were kept in the harder to reach upper cases, while the smaller, commonly used letters were kept in the lower cases for easy access. Um, Another random one, the ampersand, the and symbol, camera keeps freezing, sorry, um, used to be the 27th letter of the English alphabet. It originated as a visual combination, a ligature of the letters E and T from the Latin word et, which translates to and. When the 19th century school children recited the alphabet, they would finish by saying and per se and, meaning and by itself and. Over time, the phrase slurred together into a word ampersand. All right. Comic Sans, which is universally despised, was designed by Vincent Conner in 1994. It was created specifically for a cartoon dog assistant in a heavily criticized software program called Microsoft Bob. Ironically, the font was finished too late to be included and wasn't even used in the original release of the software it was made for. And if you go back to Helvetica, arguably the most famous and widely used font, was created in 1957 by the Swiss designer Max Meidinger. We already went over that. Was later renamed Helvetica. And there's also the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog as a standard test sentence for previewing fonts. I think it tends to be the default. Like when you look at a font menu in Windows, I know it used to be. I haven't looked at it lately, but it would show you like examples, and that's what it would be. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. It's because it's a pangram, a sentence that uses every letter of the English alphabet at least once. Didn't know that. If you want a more interesting one, you can say, pack my box with 5,000 liquor jugs, 5 dozen liquor jugs. And then, of course, there's the Steve Jobs. So, carrying on.
Which is what I have done here. Close closes the piece of paper, or if you're thinking of your desktop as a real desktop, all that simply means is I'm taking this current piece of paper off of my desk. All right, now the next
Sure.
two items on here, save and save as, I'd like to talk about just for a moment. I don't think that there is a worse feeling that anyone has ever had working on a computer than when they have just been typing for 3 or 4 hours. They've been doing
Oh
probably their best
man.
work. I mean, this is their greatest hits. And you've been sitting here and you've been typing away, and the creative
And
juices are flowing. And all of a sudden, the lights get a little bright, and then they dim, and you hear an ominous ding, and you look down, and on your screen is a little box. Now, down in the bottom, in the lower left-hand corner of the
here it
box, you'll
comes.
find a bomb.
Look, this is the equivalent of playing a game, an RPG especially. You get to a boss, you beat it, and then for some reason, this is a boss that you've been fighting for hours, finally beat it, and then for some reason the power goes out, right? Or the console freezes and you have to reset it, but you didn't get to save, or you forgot to save. This is exactly what he's talking about when it comes to working on documents.
A little picture of a bomb. It's kind of like Spy versus Spy back in the old Mad magazines. And off to the right of the
Mad
bomb is probably the
Magazine.
greatest understatement
Wow.
that's ever been written in computerdom. And what it basically says is, sorry, a system error has occurred. Now, I don't think there's a person that's ever used a computer, an IBM or a Macintosh or whatever, when experiencing a system error that doesn't think exactly the same thing. And that is, I hope I have not lost my document.
Yeah,
Now, I'd
really.
like to point something out on the computer here, and that is, as I pull down this file menu, you will notice that the word hope does not appear. You will also notice that there is no such thing as Command M for miracle. The document, all the computers.
Dude, this guy's good. I like him. I don't think I've ever really watched him before. The only other ever presentation I watched Apple related was for the lady that actually helped sell, I believe, a lot of apples to really get Apple up and going. There is a an ASMR video that's really cool. Um, but yeah, Control S. Some of the primaries I use, uh, Control S, Control C, Control U, Control V, um, Control Shift Z, which is redo in case you accidentally delete something. Or there's also a redo undo, but it depends on the program you're using that if it'll actually use it or not. And those are a lot of the ones I use for work. I rarely ever use bold or underline. Those are pretty basic nowadays, but yeah.
I guess, fools you a little bit, and that is, as you're typing along and you see all the different words on the screen, you think it's remembering it, and it isn't remembering anything. Remember that the computer will only save a document when you tell it to save that document.
hmm
As far as when,
Now that's obviously different today because a lot of programs and games nowadays will autosave as you go, and you'll be able to restore it. Um, unless something happens at that split moment with the internal memory, and I could be wrong, but if your RAM fries while it's trying to save, then it won't autosave document, and that could be totally unrelated. But again, ignorance will show throughout as we're going through this.
as the letters that are on your document, if you ever need to tell it to save a document, you have to give the computer that command. You'll notice under File that there are two save commands, Save and Save As. Now, the rule of thumb is that you should save every screen load. Every time you have got a new screen load of copy, you
Every time
should
you hit a
save your
save point,
document.
every
Now,
time
to
you beat a
save your
boss,
document,
every
you
time you
simply
find an
come
item,
down
beat
and
a battle.
select Save. Or if you like to use your keyboard, simply hit Command S. Now, as I say that, I know you sitting out there watching, you're not going to do that because nobody does. So I'd like to leave one last hint, I guess, when it comes to saving a document, and that is in the 4 years I've used this computer, I have found that 90% of all of the bombs will occur when you go to print your document. And when you think about it, that's the worst possible time it could occur because you're all done.
True.
So please get into the habit of, before you hit Command P to print your document, or before you go up under File and go down and select Print, always save your document.
I wonder why that would happen most often. I'm gonna try to find out why does it error like my camera? Why does it error so much when you're trying to print try to find out and let's see.
If you do that, you'll write me letters of great thanks, because now if the dog runs under the table and grabs the cord and heads out in the backyard, when you turn your computer back on, it'll still be saved. Now, as we go down, the other one is save as.
Okay, so oh, it was RAM. That was the problem. When you hit print, the computer had to suddenly translate everything on your screen into a completely different language for like PostScript or LaserWriter, so the printer could understand it. Imagine trying to forcefully shove an entire Thanksgiving turkey through a standard garden hose. That's what an 89 Mac was trying to do when sending font and formatting data to a printer. The system would simply run out of memory, panic, and die. Um, all programs share the exact same pool of memory. If the printer driver tripped over a single pixel or a font file was slightly corrupted, the print application would crash. Because memory wasn't protected, the print application's crash would violently take down the word processor, the OS, and the entire graphical interface with it. Total systemic collapse. To print, the Mac had to spool the document, which is a reference to how it would do it in an analog way, and then of course when it was on a computer, it would do it, meaning it had to create a massive temporary file on the hard drive. Even if you had a hard drive to hold the data while the slow printer chugged along, if your hard drive was full, the floppy disk couldn't write the temporary file fast enough. The system would lock up and deploy the bomb. Um, so yeah, it's crazy. So it was a RAM issue, which is still relevant even today,
Save
although mostly towards AI and gaming, not really towards processing.
as is a command that allows you to create what is called templates. Now, many of you would like to, for example, create a customer service letter. And let's say the first three paragraphs are always exactly the same, but you always have to add a fourth paragraph down at the bottom of your document. And it gets a little tiresome typing out the first three paragraphs over and over again. What Save As allows you to do is to
Yeah,
create a document that has the first three paragraphs. Then, when you want to open that document up and make a change, simply open that document and call it your customer service letter. Make the changes you want to make, add the paragraph that you'd like to add, and then instead of going to save, go to Save As.
and again, it's the same thing with playing. The most personal thing that comes to mind is RPGs because let's say you're at a phase to where it's like a moral um, branch way when you face a game, right? Like you want to kill somebody or you can save somebody. Depending on what choice you make, you can go here and there. Um, Save the file beforehand, do what you want to do, see where it leads, and then go back or reload that save file and go on and go forward. Um, it's the same thing as when for me in RPGs, I usually have two or three saves, um, especially if I'm recording or streaming, doing a broken playlist to where there's offline playing where I'm leveling up, and then I want to continue later. I'll have a starting point. I'll go through, save, level up, go through, and then create a new save for the stream. It doesn't make much sense, but to me it works. And it's kind of the same thing here. It's just like create a save point where you're at. That way you don't have to retype everything. And then if you want to add on later, you can just take that file, add what you want, save it. If it doesn't look good, start over and go from there. It's analogous to gaming, and it's never really think about it, but it's computer basics.
And as you go down to Save As and select that, a little box will appear on the screen and say, what would you like to name this document? At that point, give it a new name, and when you close, you'll find that you have your original document, your customer service document, and you'll have your brand new one also. So that allows you not to have to go back in and recreate the original document. Simply make changes, make additions, and then save that document.
I don't know of any. I know PlayStation doesn't do it to my knowledge, but it would be nice if there was a gaming system that allowed you to name your save files. I want to say original PlayStation probably did allow you to do that in the memory card um, application. Oh, I could be wrong. PS2 might. Xbox probably would have allowed you to do that, but I'm not entirely sure. But I did used to do that with Steam games, especially Diablo, or well, not really Steam, but Diablo. Um, I would the save file for the character or the story. I would copy and paste it out, um, and then that way I have a backup. And then, I'd have different ones and I could name it from like progress of where I'm at, where I want to be, all this and that. So gaming wise, you can't really do what he's talking about here, but depending on PC gaming, odds are you are able to do it. It just depends. But console, sadly, you can. Although it would have been really helpful.
Now be sure and always give it another name, a different name, a unique name than the one that you've opened up. If you give it the same name, then what will happen is that it will replace your original document and you'll only have the document remaining that has the changes. Okay, now we're going to get into Microsoft Word. Let me just mention that there are 7 functions I'm going to teach you today. In the advanced tape or on the advanced tape, or
You know what I'm getting vibes here? I'm getting Bob Ross vibes from Randy. It's kind of cool.
if you go to Mac Academy in the advanced class, you'll learn how to do side-by-side paragraphs. You'll learn how to do headers and footers, and you'll learn how to do style sheets and automatic outlining, and all of those are nice features. But realistically,
Hmm.
99% of the time that you spend on your computer, you will only do 7 functions, and that's what I'm going to teach you in this class. So those are the 7 that we're going to go through here today. And I've learned something about Microsoft software and about Macintosh software. And that is 20% of the features that are on there are so easy that you can pop them into the computer and figure them out. In fact, the
Sure.
biggest advantage to the Apple Macintosh is you don't need to read the manuals to use it. You'll also find that the biggest disadvantage to the Macintosh computer is that you don't need to read the manuals to use it. And so we pop our disk in there and we learn 20% of it, and we never learn the other advanced features that the program has. So the 20% you can figure out by yourself. 20% of it you'll probably never use. We are becoming very feature-laden. In fact, some people call it featureitis in some of the new programs. And there are things that it'll do that you'll never want to do. So it's the other
It's
60%
true.
that we're going to focus on today. So let's go through those 7 features, 7 functions in Microsoft Word.
So, a couple of things real quick related to the stream. You probably saw moving the chair back. It's like interrupting the green screen, so I adjusted it. You also might notice, I don't know if you saw it, but there is not a snap on the back of my hat, mostly because I love this hat. It's very comfortable, but sadly my head was too big. So what I did, probably to a lot of gamers' dismay for such a cool hat, I cut off the snap and it fits great. It's also great for headphones because it's not cutting off the oxygen to my brain. But no, I love the hat. So if you notice that, that's what that is. I have odd ways about me, and yeah, there we are.
The first one is called selecting. Selecting. Now, we used to call this highlighting, but now some of the new programs have a function called highlighting also. So we'll call it selecting, which simply means telling the computer, this is what I want to work on.
And see, I could see where this would get confusing, especially nowadays, but especially if you work and you type up a lot of emails, because highlighting, there's a highlight function for text. You want to highlight the text to where when you send a message or an email or a paper printed out, that certain section will be highlighted. Back in the day, obviously they called it highlighting, but here selecting, click, drag, select, or even alt the beginning, control, highlight, so on and so forth. Select, excuse me.
let's go through the selecting features of Microsoft Word. First of all, to select a letter. To select a letter, you simply click and drag. Now your mouse only does 3 things. It clicks, it double clicks, and it clicks and drags, which means clicking the mouse down and dragging it over something. So to select a
Didn't
letter,
have
we
a
click
scroll
and
wheel
drag
yet.
over the letter. Next is to select an entire word. Now we can do it the slow way, and that is we can click in front of the first letter and drag over each
I
letter,
still I still
or
do
you can
that.
do it the quick way, and that is to double click on the word.
I do that too.
You can double click on any word that you'd like and select that word. Now the next selection technique is selecting an entire line. Now for some of you that have used Microsoft Works or MacWrite, you might be familiar with some of these
I'm
selecting techniques.
curious if
This one gets a little unusual because it uses the selection bar. The only thing unusual about the selection bar is you can't see it. So I want you to watch the I-beam, watch the little point where right now that the mouse is, and as it goes to the left, you will notice that the I-beam turns into an arrow. Notice as it goes to the left, it turns into an arrow.
look
When
at
it
that.
turns into an arrow, you are in the selection bar. So to select a line, simply go over to the left of the line in the selection bar and click once. To select an entire line of copy, go to the selection bar and click once, and it will select the entire line. Now, to select an entire paragraph, we also use the selection bar. Simply go over to the paragraph and double-click in the selection bar, and it will select the entire paragraph.
Now there are I don't know if this is maybe exclusive to certain programs, but certain ticket systems I use when engaging with clients that I deal with, um, they allow you to click and then double click to highlight a word, and then if you got to time it right, but if you triple click, it'll highlight the whole paragraph. Um, the selection bar over to the left side reminds me of Excel, to where if you click on a line, it'll highlight the whole line, or on the top, it'll highlight the whole top. Um, so that's interesting.
So a quick review. To select a letter, click and drag over the letter. To select a word, double click on the word. To select a line, single click in the selection bar. To select a paragraph, double click in the selection bar.
he
All right, now the next
almost
one is to select multiple paragraphs. Now you may have noticed that I just used the scrolling bar over here to the side. If you need to go up in your document or down in your document, you simply click on the arrows, and each click will take you down one line at a time. If you're in a big hurry, you can actually grab the little elevator in the shaft and you can move it around in your document. Now this is very common in all of the different
oh
Microsoft and Mac
ele-
and
it took me a minute. Elevator in the shaft. He means the scroll bar. I was like, what? Elevator in the shaft, but yeah, up in the top there above me, the up and down the scroll on the side. I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, why is he not mentioning the scroll wheel on the mouse? But mice back then didn't have it. I mean, I think this was just now coming out of the generation where they only had one button on the mouse, but now there's, I think right around the time it was the, left, right, and then you had the, the multi. So yeah, didn't have the scroll wheel yet. I think they probably at this point maybe even didn't have a trackball yet. And if you don't know what a trackball is, it's essentially a mouse, and you can click, but it doesn't move around like with a ball like it used to, and it would get gunk up inside it, and it's not laser. It was literally the ball on top that you would use to move around. You were basically Saruman trying to access knowledge using a little globe. It drove me nuts. I couldn't do it. I had a buddy that used it, and he loved it, but man, you could get precise, but it was nah, it was too much. I don't know why. Can't explain it.
Macintosh programs. Okay, to select more than one paragraph, simply go over to the selection bar, double click to select the first paragraph, keep holding the mouse down, and as you drag it to the bottom, you will notice it will select every paragraph one paragraph at a time. So to select more than one paragraph, go over to the left, double click, and drag the mouse down, and it will select every paragraph one paragraph at a time. Now the next selection technique is to select your entire document. Now this comes in really handy
Select
if you
all.
have typed about 17 pages and you want to suddenly double space instead of single space and you need to select your entire document. To do that, go anywhere in your document. It can be the beginning or the middle or the end. Simply hold your command key down and click once. If
Hmm.
you hold the command key down, now the command key is two keys to the left of your space bar. If you hold the command key down and click once, it will select your entire document. Now as you scroll through your document, you will notice that it's all selected. That one comes in really handy. Now the
Couple of modifiers there compared to back then. Um, Command key is obviously different um, to Windows, but um, one thing I use a lot is the print function, print to file, print to PDF file, which um, they only recently, I don't know when that was introduced, but it blew my mind when I learned it at work that you could literally like print to file or print to PDF file, because in my line of work, I use a lot of PDF files for security. And when I would use the print options is selection only, like um, because a lot of the data that I work with, there's certain data that I want to print out. When I don't want to print the whole page, I don't want to print the headers, the footers, nothing like that. Just the data that I've selected. And so would highlight, either highlight, hold control, highlight, 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 hold shift, go all the way down. And then control P is another one that I would use. And most of the time, again, print only, or I mainly just need to print a certain page for legal document submission. So You may be wondering what I do for work when I talk about this. I don't really like to talk about it specifically what I do, but it can be a pretty crazy job, kind of demanding too.
The next one is not used a lot but does come in handy, and that is how to select an odd grouping of words. Let's say, for example, that you would like to select 5 words, or you'd like to select a paragraph and a half or a page and a half. The way to do that is to simply click where you would like the selection to start. Now in this case I want it to start right before the word I, and then go down and click where you want it to stop. But if I clicked right now, it would just simply move the cursor to that point, so I have to do something else. So to make that selection, simply click where you want it to start, go down to where you want it to stop, and hold your Shift key down as you
Yep.
make the second click. And you will notice it selects everything in between those two spots. So once again, click where you want it to start, and go down to where you want your selection to stop, hold the
Now,
Shift key down, and click the second time, and it will click in between those two spots. You'll find that that comes in really handy when you want to select something like a page and a half. You simply click where you want it to start and then scroll through to the second page. And as you get to the point where you want it to stop, then you can hold the Shift key down and click, and it will select everything in between those 2 points. Okay, that's selecting. Now everything else that I'm going to teach you in this 2-hour tape is based on selecting. You've always got to select first and tell the computer, this is what I'd like to have you work on.
so I noticed he didn't talk about selective selection. What I call it is where, let's say, for example, on the screenshot, highlight class. Um, Damn, I haven't done it in a while. I forget what. I think it's control. You can highlight class and then go down and highlight the word ability and then highlight the word word. And so you can select all 3 different word items at once. Um, but again, I think that's limited, and it didn't look like they had it back then. So unless I'm totally misremembering, which I could be.
Okay, the next function is called deleting. I want to take something out of my document, and it is extremely simple. Deleting is simply select and then hit your backspace key. On some of your computers it says backspace on your key, it's up in the upper right hand corner. Some of them it says delete, same key. Alright, so right here we've got word workshop. If I would like to get rid of the word workshop, I simply select it and hit my backspace key.
Magic.
Select backspace key. If I wanted to get rid
Work
of
of
my
the
entire
devil.
document right now, all I'd have to do is select the entire document, hit my backspace key, and it would all be gone. Now, for example, if I would like to delete this
I am
paragraph,
noticing they don't have
I
right click
simply select
menus.
it and hit my backspace key.
I guess
Now, sooner or later,
the
you're going to
UI
be
or
using
the
the
memory back
Macintosh, and
then
you're
didn't
going to do
allow it.
that, and then you're going to wish you didn't do that. It's called repentance, I guess. And they knew that was going to happen, and so they put in a nice little feature. Now, you'll notice I just deleted my first paragraph, and all of a sudden I
Control
decided I
Z.
really didn't want to do
Undo.
that. If you will go up under the Edit menu, you will find a nice little
There it
command
is.
called Undo. Now, if I
It's
select
still the same
Undo,
back
you will
then.
notice that my paragraph comes back. The Undo
Sorcery.
feature. Now, I've decided that what I need in life is an undo button.
True.
Whenever I do anything really dumb, I simply push undo and start over again. Well, it works on the Macintosh, but doesn't work in
I
life.
can see why Randy is
Let me just
so
tell you something about the undo button, and that is
so
it will
liked on these
only
demos.
remember the last
He's
function that you
personable.
did. You cannot go back and say, remember that paragraph I deleted about 6 minutes ago. It only remembers the last function that you did, and it will allow you to bring that back. So that's the undo feature.
There is current day as of this recording, Windows 11. This is what I use. I don't know about Mac. I could be wrong, but I worked Apple support for like 6 months, but that training just went right out, except for some basics. You have your uh, clipboard. You even have it on Androids now, to where if you copy something, it'll just paste it, and you can access. Like I think Galaxy has up to 40 items where you can access what you copied, and then you can select it and paste it in. Obviously, back then, because of memory limits, you can only do like one object. And there may have even been a limit to how much could be held on the clipboard. So I'll look into that.
That's deleting in Microsoft Word. Now, the next thing that you're going to want to do is inserting. Now, what that means is I want to put copy into my document, or I want to type some copy. And again, it is extremely easy. It is simply click and type. So right now, if I want to put the word workshop into my document, I simply type click where I want it to go, and type it in. Now, of course, the nice thing about word processing is that I could type in 29 pages at this point, and it would just keep scrolling my document down and adding all the copy. All right, so we've gone through deleting and we've gone through inserting. Now I want to combine those two into the next function, and that is deleting and inserting at the same time. You're going to want to do that a lot because
Okay, so clipboard could only hold one piece of copied or cut information at a time. It did not matter if it was a single letter, paragraph, or graphic. It was its maximum threshold. If you cut or copied a second item, the first item was instantly erased, gone. The clipboard was strictly short-term temporary storage utilizing RAM. If you copied a highly important paragraph and then the power flickered, it was gone. But I'm still looking into if there was a character limit to how much could be held, or if there was a certain um, offset piece of memory, or unless it was all tied in, which it may have been.
that's how you correct copy. For example, if you put in an O and it should have been an I, you're going to want to take the O out and put the I in. So let's go through deleting and inserting. Now, two ways you could do it. You could do it the long way, and that is you could highlight what you don't want and push the delete key, and then you could type in what you do want, as I just showed you. Now, that's kind of a long way to do it. Microsoft Word allows you to do both of them with one function, and that is simply highlight what you don't want and type in what you do want. So remember to delete and insert at the same time. Highlight what it is or select what it is that you do not want, and simply type in what you do want. Highlight what you don't want, type in what you do want. So if it's just one letter, you want to change an O, for example, to an I, simply highlight it and type in what you want. If you're trying to change that from the I to the O, which is what it should be, select it and then type in the new letter. All right. Now, the next thing that we want to do.
Okay, so for example, I'm working this out with Gemini. I said 29 pages of text copy. That's roughly 50,000 characters, which equals about 50 kilobytes of raw data. Standard Mac in 1989 had 1 megabyte, 1,000 kilobytes of RAM total. If the primitive OS was using 400 kilobytes just to keep the lights on, and Microsoft Word was hogging 500 kilobytes, you only had a tiny sliver of 100 kilobytes left for everything else. In theory, the 50 kilobytes of text would squeeze into that remaining memory, but if the text had any heavy formatting or if the system miscalculated, hitting Command C would instantly trigger a fatal out of memory error. The computer would freeze and refuse to process your request. So, copying 29 pages, that roughly would impact the RAM back then, and that's just basic text. So yeah, you ideally don't want to copy and paste 29 pages. Um, and even then, that clipboard memory is volatile. Like it'll be wiped out if you turn the computer off. So you can't really use it. It's a temporary save state. So you don't want to think, oh, well, all I can do is copy, which will act the same way as save as, but it'll just be in another part of the computer. Totally flawed logic. I love these deep dives.
Once we have deleted and we have inserted and we have highlighted, is that we are going to want to move copy around in our document. And if you'll remember, if any of you have ever used an IBM or one of those programs, WordStar, WordPerfect, I remember that was very difficult to move copy around. Well, you will find that it is extremely simple in Microsoft Word because it uses cut and paste. Now, let me just talk to you for just a moment without using perhaps the computer here. I've found that the Macintosh computer is an icon-driven machine. What that basically means is it works in pictures. Now, I've found working over the last few years, there are two kinds of people. There are some people that think in pictures, and there are others that think in numbers or words. Well, Macintosh thinks in pictures. And I have found that if you'll ever remember why something does something or how it does it, it isn't as important that you remember exactly what buttons to push or what words to find in the pull-down menu if you remember how it's working. So we're going to be using cut and paste, and I've got a little way of remembering cut and paste. If you'll think back to the days of when you were in kindergarten, they used to give you a pair of scissors. Now in our class they had blunted ends so we wouldn't stab each other, and then they gave us a bottle of paste.
I still have them.
In fact, I found I had high cholesterol the other day, and it's probably all that paste rolled.
Wow. He just admitted to eating paste. I never ate paste. I don't think. I sniffed it. Not gonna lie. I did sniff glue a few times. Um, maybe I did eat it. I never eat it, but I think I did lick it once. And I'll admit to that freely. I don't remember why. It might have been a dare or a double dare, but yeah, I eat. He's talking about icons on the desktop. The way I think about stuff is I utilize. I don't know. It really depends. I don't entirely do good with. It's mostly words. I do better with words. I think in words. I think in percentages. I think in ratios. Um, so icons don't really do me a whole lot of good now that I think about it. Because even like a radioactive symbol, it doesn't. If I didn't know what a radioactive symbol was, it would just look like a symbol. Like I wouldn't really get any kind of warning out of it. It doesn't look hostile. It doesn't like that. Um, Even a skull and crossbones, like as ominous as I can look, if I didn't know what it was, I guess it's just the way I'm mentally set up, but it would just look like, some sort of symbol. That's it. But obviously, these symbols are put up for a reason, so logically, I would know that, and then I'd try to decipher from there. But it's not like I would automatically know, because I guess picture preference memory doesn't really apply to me. So anyway, hopefully that makes sense.
rolling around in there. But if you remember what you did, you used to take the scissors and you would cut around the picture and you'd cut it out and then you'd take some paste and you'd stick it on the back of the picture and you would put it where you wanted it. That's exactly how cut and paste works on the Apple Macintosh computer.
It's funny because what he's talking about this, that we're obviously as of this recording a generation where this is like, well, yeah, duh. But back then, I mean, again, this is a generation of people working in office and corporates and all that. And this is only really starting getting to schools where you had computer labs starting to be set up. He was teaching home row. They had printers. You could play Oregon Trail, all this and that. Um, and they're just now starting to come into it. Just like we're currently, again, as of this recording, a generation that's just now coming into AI and prompt engineering and so on and so forth. So looking back and reflecting on this, it seems so simple now, and it's like a second language almost. But back then, they had to get used to it. Now, apply that logic to introducing a calculator or an abacus, because you're stepping away from all the mental gymnastics, and now you've got tools to help you work out math, to help you remember. Writing on cave walls became, something to be etched in memory, and blows my mind the human history behind all of it and what it all led up to where we're at now.
Cutting and pasting. So let's do that in our document now. What we want to do is we want to move the first paragraph somewhere else in our document. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to highlight it, or select it, excuse me. Then we'll go up under Edit, and you'll come down, and again, remember the pair of scissors. We cut it out. We just selected Cut
Cut
out of
it
the Edit menu,
out.
and you'll notice it disappeared. Now all you have to do is go down into your document where you would like it to appear, select a point, an insertion point. Now go back up to Edit, and again, remember kindergarten, we simply paste it in, and there it is. You cut it out, and then you paste it where you want it. Now, let me just ask you a question, and I hope if you've been following along, since it simply disappeared, where did it go? Well, the Macintosh has two
Temporary
storage
memory.
areas. There are two storage areas in the Macintosh computer. One is long-term, one is short-term. Now, one of them is RAM and one of them is ROM, but don't remember that. It doesn't have to be that technical. You have a scrapbook under the Apple menu. That's your long-term. What that means is if you cut something out and paste it into the scrapbook, it will be there when you turn your computer off and turn it back on.
That I
You
didn't
have
know.
another storage area, and it's really just a holding area, and it's called the clipboard. Now, you never see it, but it's a little tiny storage area that when you have taken something and you just want it held for a few minutes and you're going to be doing something with it, it goes to the clipboard. Cut and paste utilizes the clipboard. So what that means is when I cut that paragraph out, it went to the clipboard until I told it where to paste it. Now again, remember, the clipboard will only hold one thing at a time, and it'll only hold the last item that you put on it. As a matter of fact, when you use undo, that's where it goes. And so if you ever put something on the clipboard, you turn your computer off, when you turn it back on, it will not be there anymore. So that's how cut and paste works.
I'm looking into the scrapboard feature because I don't look or scrapbook. I don't remember a whole lot about scrapbook. And here's the crazy thing. My partner, Lady Sallock, would know a lot more than I do because she engages with Mac on a daily basis. Okay, so when the original Mac OS was released in '84, it could only run one single application at a time. Users could not easily bounce between a word processor and graphics program. To bypass, Apple created the Desk Accessories (DAS) or DAs. They were essentially tiny helper applications that were allowed to run concurrently on top of whatever main program you currently had open. Um, the scrapbook was one of these original DAs that functioned as a persistent long-term storage container for copied assets. While the standard Mac clipboard could only hold one item, the scrapbook saved its data directly to the dedicated file system and the system folders on the hard drive. This meant you could store text, images, and eventually sounds and 3D models. Really? And they would survive a complete computer reboot. It was heavily used to keep frequently accessed items. Um, Notepad was another desk accessory that lived alongside the scrapbook. This CA was built exclusively for text. Gotcha. The modern equivalent of a scrapbook would be the modern clipboard managers. And so, yeah, so I'm sitting here thinking scrapbook is equivalent to Notepad, but Notepad on Windows, you can only store, well, depending on the version of Notepad, text and images. You can't do sounds. You could add links, but yeah. So I didn't really know a whole lot about that, but I do also utilize the sticky notes application a lot on Windows, so that helps a lot.
All right, let's go back down into the program now. So we've gone through 3 of the functions. Now the next one that we want to go through, and this is one of the ones that you'll probably be using the most, is style changes. I want to change the look of my copy. I want it to look differently. Now the first thing that most people want to do is they want to take a word, a headline, and they want to make it bold, or they would like to
Alex, underline,
italicize it, or
strike
they'd like to
through.
underline it. Now there are actually
Maybe they
3
didn't have
ways to
strike
do
through.
this in Microsoft Word, so let's go through one of the ways first of all, and that is under Format. Now you'll notice I highlighted whatever it was I wanted to change. I now go under Format, and down here on the bottom you will notice the commands, bold. So if I select that, my word is now bold. If I come down under Italic, you'll notice it is now italicized. If I come down and select Underline, it is now underlined. Now also, if I decide I do not want any of those style changes, I go back under Format and I come down and deselect bold.
Shadow.
Now if you will think about those selections as toggle switches, they're either turned on or they're off. So right now, if I want to go down italic, as you can see the little check mark says it's turned on. I can deselect that, and now I can come down and deselect underline.
Okay, so I mentioned strike through. Early word processors. Graphical interface seen in the '89 tutorial, the early word processing software WordStar supported a strikeout text decoration, which again, strike through is I've used it at work a few times. It's mostly just to like present a thought process, and you have a line through the word or a sentence. The decoration starting with the version 3.0 in 1982 for WordStar completely dominated the early PC market as the most popular word processor until around 1985, to when yours truly was born and greatness abounded. Um, the strike through as a functional editing tool gained modern identity with the release of Microsoft Word 4.0 in '87. The specific software update introduced a feature called revision marks. Instead of just being a decorative font style, the program actively used it to strike through deleted text and underline new text to track edits, which, if you're editing, then that's probably where you would be. In the Middle Ages, scribes writing on parchment needed a way to signal their mistakes because physically scraping ink off parchment was difficult and risked ruining the document. They would manually draw a horizontal line, often using red or blue ink, through the text. This marked the error without fully erasing the original word. As the printing industry evolved and industrialized, drawing a line through text became a standardized proofreading mark, and it goes from there. So, um, again, I use it to present where I think if a client sends me something, some sort of data, to where like they think it would look good or it might work, um, I'll say, It basically presents a process of, well, okay, that is a good idea, but we're going to strike through and try this instead. So it's like an improvement, basically. You're not totally deleting their idea, but you're letting them know that this is what I'm suggesting. And again, it's like proofreading, but I can't go into the details because there could be security stuff, and I don't want to get into all that. But anyway, that's how it works with what I process on a work daily basis.
Now, if some of you have been using Microsoft Word for a while and you made some items, words in your document bold or underlined them and later went and changed those, and all of a sudden you went to type and you noticed that all of a sudden you were typing in a new typeface or a new size, I can tell you what the reason for that is and how to keep that from happening. A lot of times what happened is somebody went down and made a word bold, and then they went down and underlined it. A little later you changed your mind, and some of you figured out that if you come down and select plain text, it will take away those commands all at once. It was kind of a little shortcut. Well, the problem with that is plain text also takes away any other commands that you've given your document. So if you started up in Geneva and you've changed to times, if you started in 10 point and you've
Oh,
gone to 12, and you go down and select plain text, it erases all those
oh,
commands. So the
ouch.
key to making sure that you stay in the same typeface and style that you're in is simply go down and deselect bold and come down
Wow.
and
So it's a
deselect
bit of a
underline if you
minefield.
do not wish those commands to be there. Okay, that's
Dang.
one way to do it. Now there's a little shortcut that I'd like to give all of you right now, and actually these shortcuts work in almost all of the Macintosh applications, and it'll save you a great deal of time. Now, if you will remember that what you're going to do on all of these commands is you're going to press two keys at once, and they are your Command key and your Shift key.
Mm.
Now, in the old version 3.02, it didn't tell you about these on your pull-down menu. Now, under Format, you'll even find that it shows you these commands. They are key command equivalents of what we've just been doing. So, you're going to start all these commands by holding two keys down, your Command key and your Shift key. Now, your Shift key is the uppercase key, or to make all your letters
And
uppercase.
again, the one I use
All right,
most
so
is
right now, if we want to make the word workshop bold, we hold down
Control
Command
Shift
Shift
Z.
B, and you'll notice it went bold. So Command Shift B
Now they
makes your work
changed.
bold. Command Shift I will italicize it. Command Shift U
Nowadays it's
underlines your
Control
word.
B,
So
Control
notice I
I,
haven't even
Control
used the
U.
mouse at all. I haven't moved it around at all. I've just used my keyboard. Now again, I can also deselect or turn the toggle switch off by doing the same commands. Command Shift I takes away the italics. Command Shift U takes away the underline. Command Shift B takes away the bold.
One of the main pain in the ass issues I have with most prominently like a link. Say I have a client's document I'm pasting a link into. Um, Type out what I want the link to read out as, highlight, insert hyperlink, you know, put in the link, and of course you can modify it to what you want to say. The problem is, and I still have yet to figure it out because of certain tools I use, if you try to hit enter at the end of a link, go down one space and try to start typing, the whole damn thing becomes a link. Um, and yet I have to double space. I have to hit enter once at the end of the line, hit it again, and it's fine. But if I don't, it's a real pain in the butt because some of the formatting I need to use, I need to put something right underneath, and I can't figure out how to undo that. I can reach out to a team member. I have yet to do it, but for 3 years, this is how minuscule it is, but how annoying it is. For 3 years, it's been an issue, and I'm still working on it. So I'll tell you what, I'm gonna go and take a break. I'm gonna go get something to drink. Um, where are we at in this? We still have a solid hour. So um, if you're hanging out, if you're watching, most boring stream I've ever done, but to me, one of the most engaging. There will be chapters below, and we'll go from there. But a big shout out to Random and Spiky for popping in. I know we had some lurkers, and I'm probably going to lose some subscribers for this boring shit, but hey, it is what it is. Um, it's something I can share and kind of go back, review technology, how it used to be, how it was, how it will be, how it is. Um, like my experiences with it and what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, how it affects me at work, how it affects me at home, at work, and life, the equivalence of gaming. It's actually really cool. Um, and it allows me to sit and relax in my office chair without having to move too much while being productive here on the channel. I can't really game right now because I constantly shift while I'm gaming. It's hard to keep my body still. I had some major nerve pain yesterday, plus muscle pain. I'm currently dealing with back spasms. I'm a little drugged up, but maybe that's why I'm interested in all the boring stuff. But you know, so be it. So anyway, I'll be back in just a bit. I'm gonna grab something to drink. The camera keeps freezing. I apologize for that, but I'll be right back. All right, I'm just grabbing something to drink, and then we'll be back um, and continue on. We'll potentially finish this tonight, um, which makes me think that I still need to finish the Clue movie reaction that I started 3 months ago, but have yet to finish. But this stuff's really engaging, boring but engaging. So give me a few minutes, and then we'll be back at it. Alrighty. Let's go ahead and jump back in. I'm gonna turn down the audio just a little bit, but other than that, I think everything is turning out all right. I grabbed me some chicken. I need protein with my ADHD meds, and it helps a lot when I do. So I've been eating a lot of chicken patties lately. Might also help if I had protein bars, but I do not right now due to funds, which happens. Where are we at? Please pop up. Okay, cool. All right, let's get back into it.
So you will find that as a shortcut, and as I said, that works in a lot of your other programs, your other Macintosh programs. Now there's one other shortcut using these same commands that will save you more time. I used to get so frustrated when I try and decide the size I wanted my copy. I'd go up and I'd choose 9 point and it'd be too small, and then I'd choose 36 point and it'd be too large, and then I'd choose 18 point and be too small, and I'd go back and forth and waste a lot of time. And I used to wish, wouldn't it be nice if you could look at the word workshop there and say, what would that look like one size bigger? What would it look like another size bigger and another size bigger? No, that's too big. I'd like to go smaller, smaller, smaller.
Now,
Well, that is now available.
I'm not
So
a,
let me tell you
well, I'm
how to
sure
do
there's a
that.
way
If
to
you
do it,
want
but
to
I've
make
never
something
utilized
larger and see how it
any
would
kind
look
of
in a
command
larger
like that.
size, simply hold down your Command key, your Shift key, and then remember back to arithmetic and some of your algebra, and hit the greater than key. Now, if you don't remember the symbol of the greater than, it looks like a V laying on its side.
Interesting.
Greater than is on the same button as your period, and the less than key is on the same button as your comma key.
Comma. Yeah.
So if I want to make my words larger, I hit Command Shift greater than. If I want it larger again, Command Shift greater than. Now if I want to go down in size, Command Shift less than, Command Shift less than, Command Shift less than. I think you'll find that as a great shortcut. That has saved me literal hours on the computer by using that in Word and other programs. So again, Command Shift less than takes it down sizes. Command Shift greater than will take it up. All right, so that's the second way that you can do the size. And or first way that
Doesn't
you
work
can
on
do the
Notepad.
size. The second way to do the size is to pull down your font menu. Font. Now under font you will notice all your sizes. We have, if you want to make it 12 point, select 12 point. If you'd like to go up to 24 point, you can go up to 24 point, all the way down to 9 point. By the way, 9 point has a special use, and that's for real estate contracts. Okay, so we
Didn't
go
know
back
that.
up 12 point, all the way back up to 18 point. Now, by pulling down the font menu, you can also change the type font. Now, in the old Microsoft 3.02, it only listed a few type fonts here, and you had to go under the character dialog box to get all of the choices of all the fonts that are in your computer. Now, you will find there's only, looks like 8 or 9 here in this computer, but if I had 100 in here, it will simply scroll down. You'll also notice that they have changed position. The points used to be down the bottom and the fonts used to be on top, and those are now in different positions. So if I want to change my type font, I've still got
That
Workshop
would
highlighted.
drive me nuts if the
Then I select Boston.
actually the actual setup here is driving me nuts because you got the point size on top and then the the font on the bottom. Yeah, obviously, I've gotten used to it. I don't know what everybody else is, but it's side by side on the toolbar. So top to bottom would drive me nuts. I couldn't do it. Um, One thing that got me thinking when he's talking about how things have changed, menu positioning, is current Windows have got the Windows logo in the middle, in the bottom bar. There's probably a setting we can move it over, but I I'm used to it on the left because I grew up with Windows XP, and before that, Windows 98 Second Edition, and then after that, Windows 7, and then I jumped to 10. I never used ME. Um, I never used Windows NT either, but that's more corporate and engineering, I believe. But anyway, so quick note.
what Boston looks like. If I want to select Helvetica, there's Helvetica. And on down the line, there's Times, which is what we started in. So, for a quick way to change size or to change font, simply select what it is you'd like to change, go up under Font and select the size and the type font that you want. I'd like you to notice something at this point. I'd like you to notice the sizes, 9, 10, 12. All of them are outlined. Let me show you what I mean by outlined. If I select Boston, for example, you will notice now that 12 is outlined, but 9, 10, 14, 18, 24 are all solid.
Huh.
If I come down here and select Venice, then you'll notice that 12 and 14 and 24 are outlined, and the others are solid. Now those are done for a reason. Let me just explain this for a minute. When they created the Apple Macintosh computer, they realized that there were really roughly 250 spots in there for fonts. Apple themselves used 50 of those, and so it left you with roughly 200. Problem is that every font in every size is seen by the computer as a separate font. What that means is times 10 is one
Oh
font,
yeah.
times 12 is another, actually times bold is another, and so they quickly ran out of room. So what Apple decided to do was what we're going to do is we're only going to install certain sizes of each font into the computer. Now, without getting too
Oh,
technical, and I don't want to lose anybody out there, but basically what that says is some of the sizes are installed in the computer, and others the computer has to make a version of that size. What does that mean to you? That simply means that some sizes are going to look better when they're printed than other sizes.
wow.
So to allow you to know the difference, what they have done is they have outlined the installed sizes, and they have put the sizes that are not installed in solid black.
I never knew that. So essentially, the operating system has to create instead of have the standard defaults. What I am curious on, um, I'm curious why the font point sizes, why you don't see like 11, 13, 15, so on and so forth. Um, and I'm going to look into that and see why that is. These are probably just like some of the most popular sizes. Actually, Okay, so absolute foundation measurement is pica, which is exactly 12 points. There are 6 picas in an inch, making 72 points an inch. Because the system is built on the number 12, the most useful layout and font sizes naturally became multiples or clean advisors of 12. 6, 12, 18, 24, 36, 48, 72. So printers could align lines of text neatly against some physical grids. Okay. Print shops couldn't practically store a separate heavy box of metal type for every individual size 11, 13, 15, and 17. Um, and foundries standardized specific sizes and scaled up proportionally. There was also early resolution digital limitations. Engineers had to manually hand draw every letter pixel by pixel for specific sizes. 12-point type was chosen as the digital anchor because it had a massive number of integer advisors. If a system needed to scale the text to 3/4 the size, it became a clean 9 points. Half size was a clean 6 points. Even numbers and clean divisors prevented early low-res monitors from trying to render messy fractional pixels, which would turn the text into illegible blur. All right. Modern screen resolutions are so high that you can freely type an odd size like 13.4 into Word without a problem. But the preset list remains a permanent artifact of traditional layout harmony and the physical constraints of early technology. So, bit of some insight there.
Now again, what does that mean to you? Simply this. The sizes that are black aren't going to look as good as the outline sizes. So if you're always trying to make your copy look good, always select the outline sizes. Now I use Times all the time, so I installed every size in Times. Geneva or some of the others, Venice, I hardly ever use, and so there's only a few sizes installed. Now that also is going to come in handy in a few minutes. All right, so that's the way that you can change very quickly both your sizes and your fonts. Now there's another way that allows you a few more options and is a little slower, and that is if you'll go under Format and select Character. Now this opens up your Character dialog box, and for
Yeah,
some
look
of
at
you
that.
that have not used 4.0 before, you'll notice it looks a little different. First of all your fonts now are in what is called a drop-down menu, and if I click on the little arrow, there they all are under
There's a lot
Font.
more options than I
If I
thought
want
there
the
would be.
sizes, I simply click on the arrow. Now, it will only show you, when you're in the Character dialog box, the installed sizes. Those are the only ones that will show up. All of those sizes that were black under the font will not show up. And you'll notice now you have options of color. You've got black, blue, green, magenta,
Huh.
all the different colors, and you can simply select each one of those. If you've got a color monitor, they'll show up in the different colors. If you've got a color printer, then this allows you to print out each of your different plates. You can
For the longest time when I was growing up, you could only ever really print in black, and it was all ink based. And today it's still ink based. But I remember having to mess with, for the first time, a color printer. And the magenta, the blue, the cyan, you had to refill it. What's really funny is the pricing of individual printers and ink replacements. There's a lot of the times, especially like with what's some examples? Shoot, Hewlett Packard. There's also another one. I forget what it was. Early 2000s, late 2000s. It was almost ink replacements were almost as expensive as buying another printer with some reloads in it. I kid you not, there was like a $20 to $30 difference. Like for what you're going to pay for a full set of ink replacement, you might as well get a brand new printer with new ink in it. It was crazy. And these printers were fairly cheap by the time I got around to actually investing in some. And but it's kind of like men's razors, you know. If you're a guy, probably same for women. If you're a guy and you shave, you use a razor, a manual razor. Um, it's going to be cheaper to buy a new razor with like 5 replacements in the pack than to buy like a full replacement pack. I have no idea why the pricing is so messed up like that, but sometimes in Um, in sales, I don't know what corporate logic. Go figure.
Print out a black plate and a blue plate and whatever. All right, and you'll notice all of your different options. You've got a lot of underline options now, your superscript, subscript, and also, as I was mentioning before, you have got even some spacing options now, which we'll go into later on. Right now, the only other thing I wanted to point out here is what if you want a size of copy that is larger than the options that it gave you? I think ours went up to 24 at that point.
You should be
What would
able to
happen if
manually
I
enter
wanted
them.
119 point type? Well, all you do is come up here to the size box and type in
Yeah.
whatever size
Okay.
you'd like. Now here I type in 119. If I put on OK, then the computer will basically break its rear end trying to come up with a 119 point type.
Break your
Now, I
memory
mentioned at the
too.
beginning of the tape that sometimes when you go up in size, it'll look really nice when it's printed and sometimes it won't. What is the secret to that? The secret to that are those outline sizes. So here's a little rule to remember. Whenever you're going up in size and typing in sizes that are larger than the ones given, always go up in multiples
12.
of the outline sizes.
Oh,
Always
well,
go up
or
in
12. Yeah.
multiples of the installed sizes. Now, if you'll remember, 12 was
Yeah.
installed
There
in
it
one of
is.
the fonts we were looking at. So if you were going to go up in size in that font, go to 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, 72. Don't go to 31 or 35 or 59 because, again, the computer will have to make a version of that and it won't look good when it's printed. So if you want larger sizes, just think about it. Find one of the installed sizes that's outlined, double it, triple it, quadruple it, and it'll always look as good as the smaller size.
Hmm.
Okay, we don't want to keep with 119
That,
points, so let's
that's
go
how
back
automated it's
to
become.
24 point and say OK. And now when we go back to our document,
That's
there we
that's
are
something
at
I never
24
really had to
point.
wrestle with.
Okay, so that is how you change the sizes and the styles and the fonts in Microsoft Word. And as you'll notice, you got a lot of options. There's a lot of quick ways to do it. There are a lot of longer ways that give you more options. Now, we have spent about a third of the tape so far going through the preliminary parts and through basically the first 5 techniques that you need to learn how to use. And that means that we've only got 2 left, and obviously we don't have a great deal of time, or we've got a lot of time left on the tape, and so they must be a little harder, and they are. And that is utilizing the ruler in Microsoft Word. Now, a lot of you that have used Microsoft Works or have used MacWrite know about a ruler. But in those programs, you went up and you got the ruler and you went down and you put it into your copy. You literally put it above the paragraph. You got into Word and all of a sudden the ruler looked the same, but when you went to use it, then suddenly you couldn't move it and you lost the security of having it right above the paragraph. And so one of the most confusing parts, I guess, to switching to Microsoft Word is using the ruler. So let's go through that right now, and let me just give you a golden rule to using the ruler in Microsoft Word, and that is simply this.
Okay, before we get into this, I got curious. In '89, the vast majority of PC users weren't even using Windows yet. They were using DOS-based programs like WordPerfect. I remember WordPerfect or WordStar. Um, there was no visual screen layout like Randy's demonstrating. You type plain green or white text on monochrome background, like what I was talking about earlier. If you wanted a word to be bold or italicized, you didn't see the font shapes on your monitor. Instead, the text would literally change color, turning bright blue to signal it would print in bold, or it would be wrapped in a hideous formatting tags like basic text coding tags like upper arrow B text, upper arrow B, capital B. There's also revealing codes. There were one of the few running Windows in '89 would have been Windows 2.0 or 2.11. Your built-in option was a primitive program called Microsoft Write, which makes sense. While Write did have a basic on-screen layout and allowed you to change fonts, it didn't possess the sheer robustness of ruler options, hanging indents, and dynamic document calculations that Randy is flexing on Mac. So what you're seeing, and I guess if you look at the history of Windows, it makes sense. Windows has some serious catching up to do at this point that this is recorded.
The ruler will command whatever you select in your document or whatever you're going to type. Now let me say that again. You're going to bring down a ruler and we're going to make some changes. And you're going to wonder, will that change my entire document? Will it change what I'm going to type? Just remember that any changes we make in the ruler will only affect If your document's already open, if you do not select anything in the document, it won't change anything. If you select a paragraph, which is what we're going to do here in a minute, and you make a change in the ruler, it will change that paragraph only. So again, the rule is the ruler will command whatever you're going to type or whatever you select in your
I'm
current
currently
document.
eating, so I'm kind of going in and off camera.
So let's go back to the computer here, and let's bring out a ruler. Now the ruler can be found. You can either hit your Command key and R, or you can go up to Show Ruler. And there is the ruler, and it'll look familiar to most of you. So let's go through all the options in the ruler. First of all, you'll notice some little boxes under the 3-inch mark. 3 to 4
To
inch,
note,
there are
I
4
never really
boxes.
used
1, 2, 3,
ruler
and
a lot.
4. Those are your justification
It was
boxes.
never really, aside from reports in
let's
school,
change
it's
the
about it.
justification of this paragraph. Now again, I select it because the ruler will only command or make changes in what I select or what I'm going to type. Right now you'll notice that the first box is already selected. That's the default selecting. That is justified left, flush left.
I do
So
remember
if you never make any changes, every time
wrestling
you type, it will be flush left.
with the ruler,
option or the second box
mostly
is
on the
centered.
top.
And you'll notice that centers my paragraph. You'll also notice that paragraphs don't
But
look too good
I don't
centered.
remember why.
The third option is flush right. And the fourth option is justified left and right. Now let me just mention something about justifying both left and right. You'll notice it looks really nice. We've got a nice straight left edge and we've got a nice straight right edge. But you'll also notice whenever you use this option that you'll get some strange spacing in your document. Some words will have 1 space between them, some will have 2, some might even have 3.
That's what it was.
This is a nice little option. It does make it look good, but remember you give something up. When it looks really strange is if you only got 3 words in your sentence. It'll stick one way over to the left, it'll stick one way over to the right, and it'll leave the third one floating around in the middle.
That's what it was. It was the
key to using this
ruler and justification.
Narrow, columns. There's a lot of space to fill, and it looks really nice, dual justified, if you've got narrow columns. When you get 8.5 by 11, you can really get some strange looks sometimes. So again, let's go through.
That was a while ago, though, so I don't.
We can go flush left, we can go centered, we can go flush right, and we can dual justify it both left and right. Now, as I mentioned,
I will say, I can't say I've ever seen justified right ever being used in my experience. It's always been left or center. I'm not entirely sure why you'd ever use justify right, but I'm gonna look into that.
And paragraphs don't look too good centered. Headlines look great centered. So if I come up here and select my headline and hit centered, it will center my headline. If I select my subhead and hit centered, it will center my subhead, and you'll notice those look very nice. So those are your justification boxes. Let's go on to the next ones. We'll use this paragraph.
Okay, I get it now. Excuse me. Letterheads and invoices, standard business letters use right justification for the sender's address, date, invoice numbers, and metadata. Page headers and footers, financial tables, sidebars and pull quotes, short blocks of text, author bios, call out quotes tucked into the right margin of an article, often right aligned. This helps the border of the page or image, creating a strong, clean visual anchor line. Image captions, really? Linguistic necessity. For certain human languages, right justification isn't a stylistic choice, it's an absolute rule. Language like Arabic, Hebrew, Persian, Urdu are read from right to left. That makes sense. Meaning the default alignment for all standard text box must be flush right. Okay. I never even thought about language, but that makes sense.
Again, those are spacing boxes, and they're under the 4-inch mark, and there are 3 of them. 1, 2, and 3. Single space, double space, and triple space. Now, you'll notice if I want to change my spacing, I simply select the second box, there's double space, select my third box, there's triple space. Single, double, and triple. Now for you purists in the audience, you will find out that this is not really single, double, and triple. It is really space, space and a half, double space. If you ever go to compare it to a typewriter, you'll find out that it is space, space and a half, double spaced. Okay, so that's your spacing options. If you want to change your entire document, simply select your entire document and then hit the one desired. If you want to start a document, just go ahead and select that to begin with, and of course it'll affect whatever you're going to type. The next little option, under the 5-inch mark, there are 2 boxes. The one that is already selected and a second one. I have a certain way that I like to type. You'll notice in this document that I single space all of my paragraphs, and then you'll notice I double space in between paragraphs. And
Yeah,
for
makes
most
sense.
of you, if you want to double space in between paragraphs, you'd hit your carriage return twice. Well, in Microsoft Word, they've made that a little easier, and that is they've put a little box that if you will select this, excuse me, they will automatically give you 2 spaces every time you hit a carriage return.
Didn't know that.
So the second box, when selected, will give you 2 spaces every time you hit a carriage return, which is normally for most of us
Hmm.
between paragraphs. Now, for
Yeah,
you
I always had
3.02
entered twice.
users, you remember a little X sitting over here. The little X cancel all your commands in your ruler. You will now notice that there is a little scale icon, and we'll be using that in a few minutes. So those are the options between the 3 and the 5-inch mark. All right, now what we want to do is we want to go into margins. We want to set margins. Now, setting margins in
Never,
Microsoft Word is extremely simple.
I never
And I
really
found that
utilized
the best way
margins
to
a whole
remember
lot.
that is, again, to remember back a few years and to remember back to the old manual Royal typewriters. We used to have these big, heavy typewriters. We use them for anchors nowadays, but they had these big manual typewriters. And to set a
Or a
margin,
big
you'd go
ass
up on top
paperweight.
of the carriage, and there was a ruler along the carriage. And there was a button up on the top of the ruler, and you'd push that button down, and you'd move it over to where you wanted your margin
I
and
remember
let
that.
go, and that became a hard, fast margin. Then if you start
I remember those because my grandfather had one, and from what I remember, it would lift up. You can move it over and then lock it down, and it would stop it and then go over, stop, go over. So it's like that justification they were talking about. I never really got to use it a whole lot, but I will say this: from what I read, there were certain typewriters that they had their own kind of signature errors. Like certain models, you could look at letters that were typed with certain typewriters, and you knew by some error that might have happened with letters, like a T is offset, an S is offset, like every single time, and you could tell it was an early typewriter. And for some people, they could probably even tell you what model, but that's what I read. It was really interesting.
started to type and didn't do a carriage return, you just type over the same letter over and over again. Well, Microsoft Word setting margins is exactly the same. So let's go back here to the computer for a moment. And if you look up on your ruler, there is a little diamond-shaped triangle up here, a little triangle, excuse me, up here under the 0, and
I
a
do
little
remember those
triangle under
two
the 6.
triangles
Those
back
are
and
your 2
forth.
margins. Now to change my margins, I simply select what I'd like to change and reach over here and click on the right-hand margin and drag it to where I want it. Now watch my paragraph. As I drag my margin, you'll notice it changes. Now why is not my entire document changing? Remember, the ruler only commands what I've selected or what I'm going to type, so the rest of my document's staying with the same margins. So this allows you to set different margins for every paragraph if you'd like. So to set the right-hand margin, simply click and drag. Now, to set the left-hand margin works exactly the same. I simply click and drag, and you will notice immediately the margin follows whatever setting that I have used.
Now,
Simply click and drag. Now, if some of you have a good TV and you can see really well, you will notice that the left-hand margin looks a little different than the right-hand margin. It is actually 2 triangles, whereas the right-hand margin is 1.
one.
That allows you to do what is called custom left-hand margins. What that means is the top part of the triangle can be moved independently from the bottom part. Now again, I find that if you'll remember
And
certain
again,
rules,
I
you'll do better
rarely ever
on the computer. You
used
might want to remember this
this
rule.
knowledge,
The
although it
top
was there as
triangle
a part of
commands the
computer
first
class,
line in your
especially
paragraph.
English
The
typing and
bottom
whatnot.
triangle commands the rest of your paragraph. Top triangle, the first line. Bottom triangle, the rest of your paragraph. What that means.
I wanted to touch on something because I said earlier, cursive and signatures, they're kind of becoming outdated. And the most recent example was the memorandum agreement that currently, again, as of this recording, America and Iran have come to and that were signed. They weren't signed physically, they were actually signed digitally for a wartime document. It was signed in, digitally via 2 warring nations. So that just kind of goes to show how handwritten acceptance of legality is changing to digital. And it blows your mind when you think about it because I learned cursive growing up, both at home and at school. They had the outline sheets with the line, dots, line, the big handwriting. You'd learn letters when you're a kid, lowercase a, B, lowercase b, all this and that. And part of that learning was cursive. Well, I'll be honest. Look, I'm an older brother, but I don't know a whole lot about current curriculum. I don't know if they still teach cursive. They may or may not know. But again, as you look at this video, as you look at the current generation of technology, it's just growing, man, and you see stuff become obsolete, and it's crazy. Lady Salick and I actually saw Toy Story 5 over the weekend. Great movie. And in there, even in those Toy Story movies, you could see outmoded technology become discarded and just end up in a junk somewhere. And I'm going to do a gamer log about that at some point, but it's just nuts to think about.
Is you can set a different margin for the first line of your paragraph. So let's do that. If I reach up here and I grab the first triangle, you'll notice it moves by itself, and if I move it over to here and let go, I get this. I want everybody to look at that paragraph. You'll notice now that my margin for the first line is right there. My margin for the rest of the paragraph is there. Does anybody see a nice use for that? That's your custom left-hand margin. That's your automatic indentation. Now, how have you been indenting? Well, most people reach down and hit their space bar 5 times. Actually, most people don't. Most people hit their tab key.
Oh,
And they'll
excuse me.
notice that the tab
Still
key
have the
goes
mic
over
on.
too far. It goes over 8 spaces, but most people do it because it's easy. So again, if you want to set
But
your
I have the
automatic
mic muted.
indentation,
Finish
by the
eating.
way, 2.5 of these little marks over here happens to be 5 spaces, which is kind of standard. You can set that anywhere you
I
like.
didn't
If I
know
move it
that.
over to here, you can see I can bring that margin or that indentation anywhere that I'd like.
When I'm typing an email, I do tend to use tab like once to start a paragraph, have the paragraph finish, enter twice, tab, start a new one, kind of thing. Um, yeah, again, it's mostly emails I type or data documents, which you don't really use a whole lot of marginalization or even justification. And if there is justification, it's usually in the center of some legal form that's already typed. All I'm doing is just filling in a date or, uh, data entry, so on and so forth.
All right, so now every time that you do a return, you'll automatically, your first line will be indented. Now, not only can I move the top part of that triangle to the right, I can also move it to the left. This is officially called a hanging indent, by the way. Sounds like something you get on your foot. Now watch what I mean. If I move the entire margin over to the left, I can reach up and take the top
Hanging
part of
indent.
that margin and move it back, or excuse me, we moved it all to the right. Now I can take the top margin and move it to the left, and I end up with something that looks like that. And you say, well, that's really nice, but why would I ever use it? Some of you that have been trying to do this see an immediate use for it. So again, watch what I've done. I've moved the top line to the left of the rest. When would we use that? Well, let me give you a good example. Let's say right now we were going to do a lease for a piece of property. Now let's just pretend right now that we've got the people standing there in front of us and we're over on our Macintosh and we're going to type out the rules
Looking all
to
fancy,
living in our property.
high
So we
dollar.
sit down and we say the following are the rules for living in my house. Number 1, I want you
Big keyboard.
to keep your crummy dog off of my brand new carpet. Carpet.
Carpetes.
If you don't, I will shoot both you and your dumb dog.
You could not get away with this in training videos today. You could not, even in corporate, even in small business, like you, especially in like education courses like this is a part of, you just could not do it. Like something like that. Like I will shoot you and your dumb dog. It's funny because I grew up around that, but you can't do that today. Well, I don't know. Maybe a small meeting of people, but even then, there's a risk of HR, even if it's a hypothetical situation of a fictional character. It's risky.
So there. Okay, then you go down to number 2. Okay, now a lot of you've had the opportunity of printing a document that needs something like this. You've used 1, 2, 3, or 4, some nesting, or you've used A, B, C, D, or a lot of you've used bullets. Now realistically, when you typed your document, is this what you wanted it to look like? It isn't. What you wanted is you wanted the 1 and the 2 to line up nice and even, and then you wanted all your words to line up nice and straight.
That's
Now,
true, Randy.
let me just mention something to you here for a moment. A lot of you, when you started Microsoft Word, went in and tried to make this happen. And how did you make it happen? Well, most of you figured out, well, there's got to be a way to force that line over. So let me show you what a lot of you did. First thing that you did, you said, well, I know
What did
I'll
we
do.
do,
I'll
Randy?
just click in front of carpet here, and then I'll hit my space bar. Now, when you hit your space bar, and you may not be able to see my space bar right now, but it freezes up. Nothing happens. And you say, well, that's all right. What I'll do is hit my tab key.
It's locked.
Now, when you hit your tab key, you get something like that. You say, well, that's not a problem either. What I'll do now is I'll just hit my backspace key. So when you hit your backspace key, then it goes right back to where it was. And about now is when people start getting frustrated. So what I have found most people did to make this happen is you typed your first line of copy, you anticipated when your second line of copy was going to jump down on the next line, you did a manual carriage return, and then you spaced it over one at a time and tried to line it up. Had a lady the other day tell me it took her 4 hours to do 2 pages, 1 through 10, trying to line it up. Now, you can do it that way if you'd like, but watch this. All you have to do is select your copy and go over and say, okay, I want my words to line up there, and I would like my numbers to line up there, and you've got an automatic exactly what you wanted, which you will all find is extremely easy. Now let me just...
What's driving me nuts about this document right away is the spacing between the comma after carpet and the I and in if. Because when you compare it to the period after dog compared to the S in so, the spacing isn't right. And so that would drive me nuts. And I couldn't do that. Yeah, so anyway, the period after carpet and then the capital I and F. So yeah, it's those things that drive me nuts, and can't help it.
mention, I did that kind of the long way just so that you could see how it worked. And that is I grabbed the whole margin and moved it over, and then I grabbed the left-hand margin and moved it back. There's a simpler way to do that, and that is if you would like to move the bottom triangle all by itself, all you need to do is hold down your Shift key. Now when you hold down your Shift key, that will allow you to move the bottom independently. Now if you do not hold down your Shift key and you just grab it, the whole margin moves. So again, if you want to move the bottom to command the whole rest of your paragraph other than the first line, simply hold down the Shift key and move it to where you'd like that to be. And again, that's called hanging indent. All right.
Hanging
we're coming along
indent.
here. You now know how to do margins in
Not to be
Microsoft
confused
Word.
with a
Now
dangling
let's get into
participle.
tabs. In the new program 4.0,
English.
they made some dramatic changes, and most of those dramatic changes you will see in our advanced class. 2 of the most dramatic you will see in the basics class, and one of them's coming right up, and that's when it comes to making tables. So I will show you both the old way and the new option for doing tables. So let's go through setting tabs first of all. Your tab settings are up in the ruler from the 1.5 inch mark over to about the 2.5 inch mark, and you'll notice there are 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, and 4. To set a tab, by the way, Microsoft Word already has tabs set, default settings, if you don't change them. And that is, if I hit my tab button, it will go over to the 1/2 inch mark, the 1 inch mark, the 1.5, 2. So you have tabs already set every 1/2 inch. Most of you have been using those. Now if you want to set a tab other than those, then you can come up here and set the tabs in your ruler. There are 4 kinds of tabs, so let me explain each of the different tabs. The first one, if I set tab number 1, it will line up all of my copy to the right of my tab mark. If I select tab number 2, that will center all of my copy under the tab mark. And I used to say in my class, that was a nice little option, but I never saw what you'd use it for. And one person mentioned that that's a good way to center your heading over your tab, over the column. So again, the second tab centers your copy under the tab. The third tab, when you set that mark and you go to type, will type all of your copy to the left of that tab mark. So again, and we'll use the fourth one here in a minute, First one, which is your default tab, always puts all your copy to the right. The second one centers your copy. The third one puts all your copy to the left. So let's set some tabs. The first thing
There's
you do is click on the one you want.
some
If it
really
happens to be the
interesting
first one,
data
you don't even have to click on it because it's already selected.
I want to talk
Now
about
you
here
don't
in
have to
just a
drag,
bit.
you don't have to do anything. Just simply go up into your ruler and click where you'd like a tab. I'd like one right there, I'd like one right there, and I'd like one way over there. Now you'll notice it put the little arrow in my ruler so I can see it. Now if I hit my tab button, it automatically goes over to 2, goes to 3, and goes over to 4.5. And when I backspace, it goes back to those same settings. So to set a tab, simply click on the one you want, go up into the ruler, and click where you'd like that tab. Now you can still move them if you'd like. You can move them over to where you'd like them. Now if for some reason you don't want those tabs anymore, to get rid of a tab, simply click on it, pull it out of the ruler, and get rid of it. And you'll notice they've all disappeared. So let's do a
Like magic.
quick table right now. Let's say this was a sales
Randy's
report.
a magician.
And this first one is for January.
I really do like this guy, though.
And we go over to our 2-inch tab mark, and this is for Susan. Now the next thing I want to do is put a column of numbers. And I don't know how many of you have tried to make a column of numbers line up in Microsoft Word, but it's almost impossible to make them line up evenly. You'll start getting a wavy line unless you use the decimal tab. The only way to get a column of numbers to line up in Word is to use the decimal tab, and that's the 4th tab right here. So we're going to have a column of numbers. Let's select the decimal tab, go up and say we would like that column at the 4-inch mark. Now when I tab over there, it will allow me to type in the numbers. So I type in 112. Then we go down to February.
You should line them up at the decimal.
This is still Susan's sales. She sold $89 in February.
Yeah.
And now we'll go down to March, and Susan sold $212. And in April, Susan sold $41. She had a bad month. Okay, now you will notice
Had a bad
that my
month.
numbers line up exactly.
She got too
because of the
political on
tab-
Facebook, and
the
her
tab mark,
customers
the
didn't
tab-
like it, so
or the decimal tab
they
setting.
boycotted.
You don't even have to put decimals, by the way. If you just want to put whole numbers, it takes it for granted that there is a tab after the last whole number. So that's the way that you use the tab settings. That's the way you line up numbers. Now, while I have got this open at this point, I'd like to show you another feature of Microsoft Word, and that is, wouldn't it be nice while we had this if we could make Microsoft Word add the column of numbers? Now, the new 4.0 not only adds, it subtracts, multiplies, and divides, which we'll go into on the advanced tape. But right now, if I wanted to add this column of numbers, and this works exactly the same in 3.02, all I have to do is a couple of functions. And the first one I need to do is to highlight this column. And you'll also note
I just want to note something real quick, that even in my line of work, which, again, uses a lot of data, and Excel is very handy with, I have not had to utilize advanced Excel formulas for years now. When I worked for corporate Walmart a long time ago, and I had to use it there. But even then, it was few and far between. So I never liked Excel. I don't like Excel. I can't tell you why. It might be the experiences I've had with it. It might be something else entirely, but I don't loathe or abhor Excel, but I don't like it. So that's just a personal note. it's it's nothing against Excel users. A lot of people excel with Excel, not me. I'm more like hit the brakes than not to excel with Excel. And now I'll exhale. I had to.
notice that's the first little problem you're going to have. Now watch what happens when I go and try and highlight this column of numbers. The 112, no problem. I drop down, and right now, if I do that, I'm going to add up 3 Susans, February, March, and April, which is really not what I was trying to do. What I wanted
This
to
is
do
where
is I
you
wanted
want
to
to
come along
highlight.
and to be able to highlight
There
the
you go.
column only. I was doing this the other day, and a fellow in my class said, will mine do that? No, it's just mine. It's the only program that'll ever. All right, let me show you how to
The
make
demo
that happen.
program.
To
Only the
highlight
demo
a
program
column,
does, not the actual
simply
product.
hold down your Option key, and your Option key is right to the left of your Command key. Hold down the Option key, and now as you drag, it will just drag over the numbers. This comes in really handy. Let's say right now if I wanted to make, as I look at my report here, I look down and I say, you know, Susan would look a lot better if that was in bold. Now, used to, I would have to come over and I'd have to highlight that one and go up and select bold, and then highlight that one and go up and select bold. Now all I have to do is hold down the Option key,
Select the whole
and you'll
column.
notice that I can select all 4 Susans at once. Now I can go up to bold, and you'll notice now I have 4 bold Susans.
That's a lot of boldness. So you kind of notice the way he's doing that hotkey drag is it's a click and drag kind of thing, which you could only apparently do with a hotkey back then. I could be wrong on that, but that's what I'm noticing, and it's pretty interesting.
Which might be kind of interesting. All right, so let's get back to adding this column of numbers. To add the column of numbers, simply hold down your Option key, highlight the column of numbers. Now, if you've still got 3.02, you're going to want to go under Document. If you've got 4.0, you'll come under Utilities. A lot of the features have been moved over to Utilities. And you'll want to come down and select Calculate, or you can hit your Command equals button. Now, when you do that, it'll look like nothing happened, but if you'll look way down in the lower part of your screen, you will see $454 appeared in this little box. That just
Why?
happens to be the total of that column.
Oh,
Now, if you just want to know what it is, you can stop right at that point. If you would like to print that total, now all you do is select where you'd like it to show up, go up under Edit, and go to
and
Paste.
paste
And there's your total. Now, most of you probably figured out just now that since I went up to Paste, that number was residing
in
in
the
the
clipboard.
clipboard. That is really nice, allows us to paste it, but it also presents a problem.
Yeah, if
And that
you
problem is if
copy
I notice
something
that some of
else,
my
it
numbers
wipes
are
it out.
wrong and I go back to correct those numbers, let's say that should be 412 instead of 312, and I make the change, you'll notice it does not change my total.
Right.
Once it goes up to the clipboard, they are disassociated, the components to the sum, and what that means is you have to go through and add them up again if you go through and change your totals. All right, so that's adding and that's doing columns. Now, as I mentioned, in the new Microsoft Word, it has given us a brand new option which makes making tables extremely easy. Now, as you'll notice, the way I did those tables there, I had to set all my tabs and then try and line them up and make them even and do all those different items. Right now, and let me make sure that my preferences are set correctly here. I want to show the table grid lines, so we're okay. Let's go up, and there's a new feature which you will find under Document. And what that new feature allows you to do is to create a table and to create all the parameters of that table long before you're there. So
Tables used to drive me nuts because part of my job at one employer was to do merchandising layouts. And when you tried to present the merchandising layout images in a Word program, tables would be handy because you could do the different sections, four grid, 5 grid, 6 grid. Um, but the margins on working with it, I always had problems with it, and it's just how I'm set up mentally. It's hard for me to process where or what should go where and what size and what measurement. That was part of the problem. I didn't, thankfully, part of my job wasn't entirely about merchandising layouts, but it was a good chunk of it. Um, so that's one problem I had. I did have a note here. Um, a modern modification of what he's about to present. Basic premise of navigating cells using the tab key remains intact, but the integration is seamless now. Modern word tables are so heavily modified that you can embed an actual living Excel spreadsheet directly into a text document, allowing you to run complex formulas and data rendering without leaving your page layout. So, um, probably not here, but definitely you can nowadays.
let's go up under Document and go down to Insert Table. Now, if any of you have used Microsoft Excel, this is going to start becoming very familiar to you. It simply asks you now, how many columns would you like? Well, we would like 3. It asks you how many rows you would like, and I would like 4. Now, as you select these, it will automatically allow you to say what width you would like, or if you use a certain amount of columns, it will figure that for you. And I say, okay, I want 3 columns, I want 4 rows. And if I go down here to OK now, you will notice that a little grid will appear in my program, and it will show where I am going to make those columns. Now, if you want to see what those look like, we can go up here and we can go down to the Show Symbols and come up in our program, and there we have got our new grid. You'll also notice now that I can click on the little scale icon and change my ruler. I actually have 4 of the different ruler settings. I can have a ruler setting that shows a margin for each of my columns, so I can change the margin. I can come up and go back to the original ruler. I can come to this one that shows a little T, and I'll leave it there for just a moment.
Okay, something I wanted to go back on real quick. Earlier with the calculate function, it pastes it into the clipboard and then it saves it down on the bottom left of the window. You copy and you can paste that in, obviously. But like Randy said, they're not entirely connected to each other. So if you modify one of the numbers in the formula, the number that you've copied and pasted will be totally different. I also mentioned that theoretically, if you hadn't pasted the number, the final calculation result, into the document, but you highlighted and cut or copied any other type of data, it would wipe out that total. So you'd have to go back through and recalculate. And I just confirmed that.
Now that I've got my little grid showing here, and you'll notice it gave me 3 columns and it gave me 4 different rows coming down. I can now type Susan, for example, and now you use your tab button. And your tab button works just like Excel. It'll go from cell to cell. And I can go along now and select and put in each of the different factors. I could put in January at this point and go along and put my different sales figures. Now if I want to change the sizes, I can go up into my ruler and I can grab that little T, and you'll notice I can move. Now at the moment, the only one that's moving is where my cursor was. So it was the top row. And get that back to basically where it was. And I can set these any way that I'd like. So you now have 2 options when it comes to making tables. And you will find that this table function, especially if you're used to Microsoft Excel, will be extremely easy and functional for you if you've used those programs before. Okay, now let me turn my symbols off again so they don't clutter the page. All right, our document's starting to look just about how we want it. We have set our margins. We have set basically our columns. We have set all of our tabs. And we have our program looking pretty much like we're going to want it to look.
Okay, another quick note. I got curious because calculations and formulating data uh, bloated the file size. So if you wrote a document containing just a single word hello in plain text, it would take a clean, tiny 7 bytes of data. If you saved that exact same Word document in Microsoft Word back then, the file would balloon to roughly 19,968 bytes. You were paying a massive premium of memory just to look at margins. So basically, the text itself was a microscopic fraction of the file. The rest of those thousands of bytes were filled with heavily internal tables that Word used to track structural metadata. Um, so what did I lost it here? Formatting data absolutely bloated the file size. Okay. Massive disproportions of layout data versus text is precisely why the computer would choke and trigger the infamous bomb whenever you went to print. If you typed plain text, the computer had an easy job. But the second you hit Control P, the Mac had to look at all those complex hidden layout tables, parse the exact positioning math of the margins, and translate that massive chunk of data into printing language like PostScript. Because the computer only had 1 megabyte of total RAM to share between the system, the application or the print spooler calculating it would lock up and freeze. Formatting choices were actively trying to murder your computer back then. It's an excellent talking point um, because it's the structural bloat from like just even having one word in there, and then the marginalizing justifications, all this and that, tables. It could totally mess it up.
So now what we're going to do is we're going to come back up into our document and we're going to make sure that it is spelled correctly. And we're going to use the spell checker. Now those of you that have had Word before, the old version 3.02, you will find a much bigger dictionary in 4.0. You will also find a thesaurus that is built in, and you'll also find that it'll now search for words phonetically instead of just looking at the first 3 letters. So let's go through how to do a spell check. First thing I always do is come up and click at the beginning of my document. If you don't do that, you do a spell check, it'll always ask you, do you want me to go back and start at the beginning? If you click at the beginning, then it won't ask you that. All right, so now, again, if you've got 3.02, it'll be under Document. If you've got 4.0, under Utilities, go.
So one thing, because I got curious about this too, because I wondered about spell checking when it first got introduced into um, document applications. Back then, and Randy's about to touch on this, back then there was just a spell comparison. It would only, it couldn't detect if you use a wrong word like there versus there. Um, the biggest modification between then and now, it's been generational. Um, Modern WordPress is no longer just mindlessly compare isolated strings of text to a static dictionary file, like he's about to present here. They obviously can connect to the internet, or modern day, they're going to use AI to check to make sure it's grammatically correct. It'll, something spelled right or wrong. So there's obviously a big difference then as compared to now. It may even be totally different in the future. I don't know how it could be, but I'll get hypothetical about that and we'll look at it.
Go down to Spelling, which is also Command L. Now, what that does is that opens up two dictionaries. It used to be called the main dictionary, now it's called the MS dictionary. It'll open that up, and also the user one dictionary. Now, the key to using the dictionary is to remember that it is not a spell or a spelling checker, it is a spelling comparer. What that means is that it will look for any time you've got a group of letters with a space on one side and a space on the other, said that must be a word. Then it looks through its dictionary to see if it can find that word. If it can, it says the word spelled correctly. If it cannot, it says the word is misspelled. Now, sometimes neither one of those cases is correct. So my first, I guess, bit of advice on using the spelling checker is to don't rely too heavily on it. Also remember, it checks for misspelling of words. It does not check for misuse of words. In other words, if you put in T-H-E-I-R and it should have been T-H-E-R-E, it will not find that as a misspelled word. If you wanted A-N and you put in A-N-D, it still finds A-N as a correctly spelled word and will not stop. So when I first got mine, I'd spell check
Wow,
it and send it off and had all kinds of errors in it.
that's
So if you, again, remember what it's doing, it'll
yeah,
make
that's a
more
pain in
sense
the
to you.
ass.
So let's go back to the computer now.
Okay, I I got a little hypothetical with Gemini, and I was like, okay, so how are spell checkers going to be better in the future? It outlined something interesting. Um, Spell checkers will heavily utilize continuous on-device LLMs, large language models. They won't just look up the word in a local dictionary, they'll analyze the word, knowledge, context of your entire document. If you write about a specialized gaming completion strategy or an obscure movie reference and accidentally spell a completely different valid word, the AI will evaluate the discourse level pattern, understand the niche context, and fix the word seamlessly. That's kind of cool. The biggest flaw with current generation grammar correctors is that they are structurally conservative. They try to flatten every sentence into uniform corporate oatmeal, heavily punishing creative writing slang or deliberate artistic rule breaking. Advanced NLP systems will accurately distinguish between a genuine mechanical error and a deliberate stylistic choice with incredibly high accuracy. This is future use. If you're intentionally writing a casual stream script or creating a sarcastic character dialogue, the AI will recognize the structural pattern and step back, preserving your unique voice rather than forcing a standard correction. There's also hyper personalization and behavioral awareness. There's also ambient real time voice refinement. Speech to text transcription is historically famous for butchering text due to accent variations or audio interferences. Like current day AI, you feed in words, it'll read it out a certain way. It sounds like bullshit. Rather than lazily spitting out literal phonetic translations of whatever sound waves are hit by the microphone, um, future transcription software functions as a conversational editor. It natively understands prosody, pauses, and conversational self repair strategies. If you misspeak or stumble mid sentence, the model instantly fixes the syntax and filters out the phonetic static, in the fraction of a millisecond. I misspoke. That's if you're uh, wow, I can't even think. Speech to text. Basically, you're talking into the mic, and like in this case, Gemini would write down what you're saying. This is a relevant note for me because if you look at the captions here on the channel throughout the years, I have a speech impediment, and a lot of the times the auto captions that are generated on these videos, uh, it can be butchered because of the mispronunciation that my dentures cause, or my rambling or um, ADHD episodes where I'm just like kind of mumbling under my breath and the mic doesn't catch it. But that's kind of here nor there. One current example is that when I'm interacting with Gemini and I'm presenting a lot of data, like a ramble of ideas, Gemini is really good at catching it because I've personalized it. Um, and it basically knows what to look for when I'm speaking to it. Um, so I've noted that I use dentures. I have a lisp. When I'm speaking, there can be hiccups every so often. Um, and using voice to text, the transcript is going to fuck up words. There's even times when I say Gemini, the word Gemini, and because of the way I pronounce it, or because I might stumble with a word, it'll say Jim and I, or something like that. And Gemini knows to catch that, and it says Gemini actually comments on it. It's like, yeah, your voice to text is totally messing up, but I caught what you said, basically. So that's kind of the future variation of spell checker, and it says future, but it's kind of happening now.
And you'll notice that it's opened up a dialog box, and it says right now, I'm already here are two dictionaries. MS Dictionary, that's the big one. You can't make any changes to that. You can't add to it. You can't subtract to it. The other one, User 1, you will be able to make some changes to, so let's start. So we click on Start Check, and it starts looking for a word that it does not recognize. The first word that it does not recognize is throt, T-H-R-O-U-G-H-T. Now, whenever it finds a word it does not recognize, you have three choices. There are three things you can do. First thing you can do is say it's okay, leave it alone, no change. But this one is not okay.
This
Second
was
thing you can do is spell it yourself. Now in this case I just made a typo, so I'll type in
basically just replace it.
T-H-O-U-G-H-T. That's correct. Now I come down and click on change.
Yeah.
It'll go into my document and make that change. The next word it finds is tomorrow. Now, as I mentioned, there
And
are three
again,
choices. You can say no
AI
change, leave
totally
it alone,
changing this.
or you can say let me type it, or you've got a third choice, which is help me. Now, that's the one I use the most.
Just a thought here. Um, like I mentioned, AI can do this nowadays. The analog tools here, the digital tools that you could use to spell check, you could find a word, replace it, even if it wasn't a part of a standard dictionary that came with the OS or the software. Um, there was a time when even these small tools impacted jobs and careers because editors, to my knowledge, and I think I'm right, I could be wrong, but small stuff like this, it was part of their job to catch it, spelling and grammatical. But when spell check came in and word processing came in, it must have had a bit of an impact on their roles universally. Maybe not a huge impact. I might double check this with Lady Silox. She probably has more of a knowledge on the history, or I might check with Gemini. But the reason I say that is because even these small impacts and changes in technology that introduce tools and features like this, they impact careers and they impact jobs and company uh, standard operating procedures, so on and so forth, especially if it's media related or whatever. Um, so I'd be curious to find out, much like how AI is impacting a bunch of stuff today, how these smaller stuff still had an impact. Obviously, not as big or as controversial, but they did have an impact. And so I'm curious if if it impacted the job market, and if it did, how big. And I'm going to look into that.
And the reason is normally when I misspell a word, the reason I misspelled it is that I don't know how to spell it. So let's go through and now ask the machine, help me find the spelling of tomorrow. Now when you hit suggest, it will try and figure out what you were trying to spell and give you suggestions. So let's hit suggest. And it comes up and basically says, all right, you were trying to spell tomorrow, tomorrow's, or Tommy rot. Now, it even selects the one that it's pretty sure you were trying to spell and puts it down here in the box. And
Tommy
you say, you're
rot.
exactly right.
Huh.
That's what I was trying to spell. So now all you have to do is hit change. The next word it finds that it does not recognize is valuable.
Okay, it's just as I thought. When the digital spell checker invaded the workplace in the late 70s and 80s, the knee jerk reaction from a lot of humans was absolute panic. Many feared it would be a total job killer for anyone whose career relied on the written word. However, the real historical impact wasn't a sudden wave of massive job losses, it was a chaotic, massive shift in job descriptions and workplace standards. Um, Spellchecker paired with basic word processing did eventually dissolve the traditional typing pool, but it didn't necessarily eliminate the workers. Instead, it forced some massive reskilling. Typists were upskilled into secretaries and administrative assistants because they no longer had to spend 8 hours a day meticulously checking their own spelling and restriking keys. Their productivity skyrocketed. They were expected to handle a much broader range of tasks like managing databases, scheduling, and basic layout design. There was a professional proofreader. When software like Microsoft Word started hitting offices with built in dictionaries, upper management erroneously assumed, great, the computer can spell and we don't need to pay humans to spell check anymore. The reality, this caused a temporary dip in specialized proofreading roles, but it quickly backfired. Um, in the early spell checkers were just mindless word comparers. They couldn't detect if a human used the wrong word entirely, like they're there instead of there. After a wave of embarrassingly riddled documents and newspapers made it to print, companies realized that while the software saved time, they still absolutely required human brains to check the context, grammar, flow, and fact checking. Here's where it relates to today, because it's the same thing for AI as it stands as of this recording. A lot of people, and even Google and Gemini has a warning that says AI isn't perfect, it can make mistakes. So much like with a spell checker that freaked people out, you're seeing the same thing today with AI. Now, again, a lot bigger impact. I'm not equivocating spell checker to AI, but the basics remain the same. Technology is never going to be perfect. Not even AI will ever be perfect. And while it may impact jobs, much like AI, and you're going to see it. You're seeing it now. How people put all this money and all this time into AI, and it'll change everything. There's a bit of a bubble forming, much like the dot com boom, and people fired and changed positions with spell checker, thinking it's going to save that type of role, but it backfired. And so you're kind of going to see the same thing with AI and certain corporate standings. So anyway, it's a hell of a comparison.
So I say, I don't know how to spell that either. And it says, okay, suggest. And you will notice now that it pulls up valuable, valuably, and it even pulls up some word that if you have a slight speech problem, that maybe it thought you were trying to do. Now, if it happens to be any of these words, then you simply click on those, and it will automatically put it in the box. But again, it was right. It is valuable. I say change. It makes that change. Now it brings up the word Mac. You will notice Mac is not misspelled. It's simply not in its dictionary. So I say no
What?
change. The next word it brings up is my first name. After a while, it gets a little tiresome every time you do a letter and do a spelling check on it to have your name come up as misspelled, or your city or your company. So this allows us now to put words into the dictionary. First rule to putting words in the dictionary, make sure it is spelled correctly before you
True.
put it in the dictionary. Now, to put it in the dictionary the first time when you've never used it, simply click on user 1. That opens up that.
Okay, something that just hit me. Randy typed in the word Mac and it wasn't in the dictionary. I'm like, okay, he's using this software on a Mac. Why isn't Mac a part of the dictionary? Early digital spell checkers were incredibly rigid word comparers with very limited storage space to save memory. Main dictionaries only included standard linguistic vocabulary, nouns, verbs, and adjectives. Proper nouns, trademarks, and brand names were explicitly left out. So I guess that answers that question.
that dictionary. Now come down and click on plus, and that automatically puts the word up into the dictionary. Now, when you finish this document, you will find a brand new little icon that says User 1 Dictionary on your desktop. Put that up in your system folder. And from now on, whenever you use it, simply come and click on plus. Let me go over that again just for some of you. When you finish and you have put a word into the user one dictionary, you clicked on user one, then you click on plus. When you finish the document, you'll find a brand new little icon that'll say user one dictionary. Take that icon up and put it in your system folder. Now from now on, every time you want to put a word in that dictionary, it will automatically open that dictionary and put that word in it. So all you got to do is click on plus after that first time. Now what if you do click on user one again? Well, when you finish, it will say you've already got a dictionary called user one. What would you like to call this one? And you say, well, I'd like to call this one medical terms or technical terms. So it allows you to create more than one dictionary.
Now, this is a good idea because I got curious again about the memory problem. If you go through, because to me, what I would want to do and what I have done in some regards is kind of the same thing. I would want to take a large data set of words and just go ahead and manually expand whatever is default with the word dictionary for the checker. Just add it all in. I'll do it myself. Throw it in there. The problem is the computer's going to want to search through all those words, and with as little memory as you had back then, that's not a good thing because it's going to need to go through. So he's talking about having different data sets of words that, depending on the document or the work you're doing, just upload that, much like a ROM into an emulator, and let it read those terms along with the basic nouns, pronouns, and adjectives, and go from there. So yeah, it's interesting, and I get curious about that. And there's no like hard limit of how many words you can add to the spell checker, but you're definitely going to hit a processing wall if you have too many for it to try to go through.
All right, let's go back to our document now, and we go to continue check. And it says, I've reached the end of your document. It's all spelled correctly. And I say, thank you very much, and I'm done. Again, please do not rely too heavily on your spelling checker because it does not check punctuation. It does not check misuse of words. And sometimes there are some words that perhaps are not in its dictionary. So it's a nice little tool, and certainly the new one in Microsoft 4.0 is much better than the old one and the thesaurus and all that. But don't rely too heavily on it. All right, now it is getting time to print. And here is where, again, you will find a major change from 3.02 to 4.0. In 3.02, you had two ways of looking at your document. You had the galley view, and that's what we've been typing in all along. And then you had what was called page preview. Page preview allowed you to see a thumbnail sketch of your document. In the new Microsoft Word 4.0, we have four views of our document. We have the galley view, which you're looking at right now. We have a print preview, which I'm going to show you in a moment, and we also have a page preview, which I'll also show you here in just a few moments. So we have many different ways. We have four different ways of showing our document. So let's go now over to File and say we would like to see what our document's going to look like when we print it. Now you will find when you go to use Word that the next kind of major obstacle is what you would like to do is you would like to make your document, or you'd like to make Microsoft Word break the pages where you want them to break the pages rather than where it wants to break the pages. And I still know a lot of people that print out their document to see where the program's going to break the pages. Then they'll go back and they'll add lines or they'll
Oh
subtract
wow!
lines trying to make it come out just where they wanted it. You don't have to do that now. So
Can you imagine? Wow, no wonder deforestation was an issue. I mean, think about that. What he just said is like you have to print out the pages, see where it's going to break, try to get the spacing right, and then reprint it. I mean, unless you're using both sides of a paper for printing, which a lot of people did, um, that's a lot of paper. That's a lot of paper. So the print preview feature is obviously a good thing to introduce into all this.
let's go back to the program here for just a moment and let me show you a few little tricks. First of all, in the new 4.0, it will automatically show you where your page breaks are. You will find little dotted lines coming through your documents, right, like right here, where it's going to put a page break. So in the old 3.02, you had to select repaginate under document, and that would put the lines in where it was going to put page breaks. Now it'll automatically put it as you're typing it. Also, if you have selected widow control, which you'll find under page setup under document, that will allow it will tell the machine never allow just one line to be hanging on the next page. And so you'll see two little lines there that it'll show you where your page break's going to be, and if you only type one other line, it'll put it on that page for you. Okay, so here we are, we're looking at our document. As you're typing through your document, if you know where you want page breaks, let's say I know right now that I want a page break after that paragraph, you can put in an artificial page break. And all you have to do is click where you want the page break and hit Shift Enter. And you'll notice that Shift Enter puts in a page break. So as you're going through your document, if you know where you want your page break, simply hit Shift Enter. Now if there's somewhere down the line you decide you do not want that page break, simply highlight it like you would a line of copy, hit your backspace key, and it will disappear. So for a page break that you know you want, simply hit Shift Enter. All right, now we want to see what our document's going to look like when it's printed, so we come up under File and go down to what is now called Print Preview. Print Preview. And you will notice that there is a nice little thumbnail sketch of what your document's going to look like when it's printed. Now if some of you on the screen suddenly think you went blind and you can't read that, don't worry about it. I can't read it on the computer screen either. It is simply there to give you a thumbnail sketch of what your document is going to look like when you print it.
It's probably like that, not easy to read. It's probably a bunch of jarbled text, but with the basic outline of what it'll look like to save memory. Um, Print Preview, the first major version of the software to include a dedicated page preview mode, which allowed users to see a miniature thumbnail sketch of how their document would look, was introduced in Microsoft 3.0 in 1987. Before this, users were effectively flying blind, relying on Randy's method of printing, checking the layout, manually adjusting the text line or spacing. In 1989, the one Randy is demonstrating with, Word 4.0 significantly evolved this by introducing four distinct ways to view it, including much more sophisticated page preview, the resource-heavy page view that let you see exactly what you would get in real time. So, yeah, I mean, the paper usage would have been fucking insane, man, just insane. Kind of like my camera with the freezing. Freeze! It didn't freeze.
Now you will notice there are four icons on the side here to use in Print Preview. Back on 3.02, you used to have a little magnifying glass. And then what that allowed you to do is to click on the magnifying glass, come over into your document, click, and it would blow up the document so you would read it. In the new 4.0, you don't need that magnifying glass because you now have what is called Page Preview. Now Page Preview, when you click on it, will look just like your galley view. It'll look just like what you've been typing. But there are two major changes. There are two differences between looking at it in the galley view and when you're looking at
Yeah,
it in the
and
page
the text
view.
is
And what
smaller in
those
the
changes
preview due
are
to
this. Back in the old 3.02,
memory
when you're just
conservation.
typing along, and also when you're just in galley view in Microsoft 4.0, if you do side-by-side columns, you do the commands, but you don't see on the screen what it's going to look like. The old what you see is not what you're going to get. If you used headers or footers or some other of the features that the 3.02 had, you never saw what they were going to look like. It'd print out and look great, but all
There's
you saw
also
was
no
the commands, and they felt like that was
vector
a real
graphics.
disadvantage. So what they have created now is Page View.
Modern is
And when you
vectorized.
click on Page View
It's
in
math
your
that scales
program,
perfectly
it
to
will
any
look
size,
just like
basically.
your galley view, except
Mac
you'll
fonts were
see
bitmapped,
everything
much like
that you'll see exactly what you're going to get.
old school
Now, I
NES,
mentioned there are two
SNES,
items. The second item is
SNES,
it is extremely
SNES games.
slow when you're in page view. As a matter of fact, unless you have 2 to 4 megabytes of internal memory, and most of you that have Mac Pluses or have SEs, the standard SE, only have 1 megabyte of internal memory, it'll get so slow that you won't like to work in it. In fact, I've had a lot of people say they went back to 3.02 because they got tired of working with 4.0 in the page view. Now, if you have a Mac 2 or you have one of the new 2CXs or you have installed more internal memory in your machine, then you won't notice a great difference.
Oh, you could upgrade.
So you will notice that. Also, let me mention one other item that just pops
I
up.
didn't realize you could upgrade the memory in a Mac back then.
3.02 of PageMaker, or
Interesting.
3.01, excuse me, of PageMaker, you will find that you can't load the new versions of 4.0 Word into it. Now, let me say that again. Some of you will, here you'll work up a brand new document in 4.0. You'll go to load it into your PageMaker program, and all of a sudden you'll get a little dialog box that say your document is incompatible. Now, at the timing of this tape, and the tape, always gets out of date very quickly, but right now there is a new version for $25 from PageMaker called 3.02, I think.
Okay, two things real quick. One, he just noted on how fast these educational videos back then could the technology could far outpace people getting their hands on this. Um, and it's the same thing even today. I mean, you can find YouTube videos from years ago that are just totally out of date. Even the information I'm presenting here at some point in the future, when I'm comparing like the past to the modern, it's going to be out of date. The other thing was upgrading these Macs, right? Like I said, I don't have a whole history with Macs. It's mostly PC, and when it comes to consoles, PlayStation and Nintendo mostly. Um, but upgrading for machines like the Macintosh SC, simply plugging in new memory chips wasn't enough. Because the motherboard couldn't auto detect new RAM capacity, you had to perform physical modifications to the board itself. You often had to manually clip a specific resistor like R35 or R36, or move a tiny plastic jumper on the logic board to tell the system, hey, I added more RAM, please look for it now. If you clip the wrong resistor or damage the trace while fiddling with the board, you have a brick computer. It, wow. Um, by 89, the models like the SC used SIM, single inline memory modules. These were a massive leap forward from the older method of soldering individual memory chips diffs to the board. You'd snap them into the socket, which is relatively simple. You kind of see that nowadays. If you were careful about static electricity and didn't bend the delicate pins. There's also soldered RAM. If you had an older model, the RAM was often soldered directly into the board. Upgrading meant desolderizing dozens of individual chips and soldering in new ones, which makes me think of Android phones and Apple phones today. For the longest time, you could manually upgrade the memory, the storage capacity for your phone, not necessarily the RAM, but the storage capacity. You're not seeing that a whole lot nowadays because they want to sell you cloud um, expansion memory, which you may or may not have access to if the internet goes down or your mobile data goes down. Again, just going to preach on this. We're coming to a learning point in, as of this recording, the current generation of becoming too reliant on digital storage. And so having physical backups of stuff, media, game saves, documents, so on and so forth, it's going to be totally necessary in case there ever is a what I called it. I did a video a long time ago. Um, a a digital apocalypse or a digital blackout or something like that, and it's going to be tragic if you don't have physical backups, which is why I'm reinvesting in physical games as soon as I can get my hands on them. Movies, I'm still a little wonky on.
that now accepts 4.0 documents. Now, if you go to place it and it won't place, all you have to do is go to page setup, and it'll ask you, or excuse me, go to save as, and it will allow you to save your document as a 3.02 document. I know that sounds kind of strange, but when they came out with the new 4.0, it won't load into PageMaker. Save it as a 3.02 document and it'll load fine. All right, let's go back now to then the print preview. This is going to look like when we print it out. And you'll notice you got a brand new little icon down here, which is your printer. That allows you, once you've looked at this and you say, hey, this looks fine, to simply hit the printer and it'll go right into your print mode. Now you've got other icons here. Right now it's showing me page 1 and page 2. If I want to see other pages in my document, I simply click on the arrows, and now you'll notice I see page 2 and page 3.
You're going
If
to
I want to
notice
go
my
back,
energy
I simply click on
kind
the
of
top, and there
going
is
down.
page 1 and page 2 again.
Um,
So what that
I'm
allows you
really
to do,
enjoying
going up
this,
and
but at
down
the
the
same time,
scrolling bars to scroll through
I'm
your
I'm
pages.
getting wiped out.
If you click on
My
this
ADHD
icon, it will
meds kind
show
of
you
wearing
your
off,
pages
so
one at a time.
I'm going to
If you click on it
crash
again, it will show
eventually. You'll
you
see a
your
lot of
pages 2 at
yawning,
a time.
but
I personally like
we're
to
going
look
to
at
sit
mine
through
one
this.
at a time so
I
that
started it
I can
and I want to finish
judge
it.
each page and see exactly what I want it to look like. All right, so there's page 1 and 2, and
Oh,
the
he's doing
next
this at
one. The
7:48
next
p.m. I didn't
icon, the
even notice
second
the
little
time.
icon, allows you to see your margins. So if I click on
It's
that icon, you will notice
9:40
immediately
right
that
now.
here are my margins. If I click over on this page, there are my margins. So what that allows me to do, there's my top margin, which is 1 inch. my bottom margin, which is an inch,
By the
then my
way,
side
you can
margins.
only do one
While
document
you
at a
are in
time,
print preview, you can
one
now
document
click
file
on
at a
these
time.
boxes and you
You
can
couldn't
literally move
open,
your
because of
margins.
memory,
Now notice the little box, or
you
notice
couldn't
right in the
open
center of the
multiple
screen at the
documents
top that it will
or
tell me where
document
I'm at.
files.
So if I need a 1/2 inch margin, if I come down I want my 1 inch margin, it allows me to move my margins. Now one little hint of caution is that if you move your margins, let's say that right now you said, well, I'd like to force some of my copy up onto the second page. I'm going to create a 3-inch margin down here at the bottom, so it has to do that. Please remember that whenever you change a margin in print preview, that will change that margin on every page in your document. So if I
Oh,
create a 2-inch margin at the bottom of this page, it will also create a 2-inch margin on all my pages in my document. So be
oh, that must
careful
have
with that.
fucked some people up.
So that is what that is for. Now, there are some other features on here, and one of them is that you can also change your page break right while you're in print preview. Now
Huh.
notice Randy's Ready reference here used to be on page 2, and here was my page break, and I says, well, I really want my page break to be down here a ways. And so I can move that page break, and I can set this. So you can see now how simple it is that you simply call up page 1, you set your page break where you want it, and you go to page 2, and you can come down. Sometimes your page break is hidden under your bottom margin. There it is right there. You can move that to where you would like it, and you can literally move your page breaks anywhere that you want them as you're previewing your document, which is a nice option. Okay, we got one icon left, and that is for putting page numbers in Microsoft Word. In Microsoft Word, by the way, there are 3 different ways that you can put page numbers into your document. Lady came up to me one day and she says, what I would like to do is I'm printing a book. I'd like the first 5 pages not to have any page numbers at all. I'd like the next 5 to have Roman numerals, and then I would like the rest of them just in Arabic numbers. If you're going to do that, you
It's
have to
interesting.
use style sheets or create sections in your document, and you can give each one of those a differing numbering system. And we'll teach you how to do that on the advanced tape. So there are 3 ways of using page numbers in Microsoft Word. Number 1 is you can use style sheets and sections. We'll show you how to do that. Number 2 is that you can use headers and footers, and we also teach you how to do that on the advanced tape, but you can put page numbers in your header or in your footer. Now, the third way you can do right here, and that is if all you want to do is simply number your pages from number 1 through number 30, and you don't want to change the style or the size, you just want to simply number them, come up and click on the first icon. Now, if you click on the first icon, you'll notice my arrow now turned into the number 1. If I want now to put a page number, I simply come into my document, and I can put my page number wherever I would like that page number to reside. So right now, if I click there, you will now notice a little 1 has appeared, and there will be a number 2 and 3 and 4 and all the way. Now, some of you that are going to be
Yeah,
watching
but
this tape figured out how to put page numbers in your document. And I would guess that not very many of you figured out how to take them off. In fact, I ask all my classes when I teach, have any of you figured out how to take the page number off your document? And
wouldn't
of
you
all the
just
classes
click
I've
it
taught, I've
again?
only ever had one person raise their hand and say, I did. And I said, how did you get it off? And he said, I used whiteout. So let me show you how to get that page number off. First key to getting the page number off your document is that you have to make sure your margins are showing. So you have to click on that third icon. You will notice that when you click on that third icon, it puts a little box around the page number. Now that the little box is on the page number, you can pull that little box off the screen, and when you reformat your document, you will notice that the page number has disappeared.
Wow,
So
what a
again,
pain.
click on the second icon that puts the margin symbols, the margin lines, then go down to the page number that has a little box on it, pull that page number off the screen, and when you reformat your document, you will notice that the page number has now disappeared. All right, that's how to work in page preview. So now let's cancel that and let's go back to our document. You'll notice now that our document is ready to print. Now, let me give you a few keys to printing, and I won't show you this on the screen, but I'll just tell you the steps that you need to go through, and I'll poke through some of them here on the screen. The new 4.0 has eliminated a couple of the steps that I'm going to tell you. I'll walk through all of them for some of you folks that might still have 3.02. Some of you may have noticed that you spent a great deal of time on your document and you got your formatting just right. You got your margins set just where you want them. You had all your tabs set just right. And then at the last minute, you'll say, I want my document to look really good. I'm going to go print this on a laser printer. And you'll go down to your Apple store, or you'll go to another department in your company, and you'll
Here
stick
it
the disk in
comes.
the laser printer and another computer there, and it'll print out, and all your formatting has gone all skiwampus on it. Everything's hanging all over the place.
Skiwampus. That's a
And
hell
this
of a
gets
word,
really
isn't it?
frustrating, and some people think that it was something wrong with the second computer. The reason that this happens
File
is that the
format.
image writer has a printing surface or a printing area that is actually 1/2 inch larger than the printing area on a laser printer. Now, if you think about that for a minute,
Oh,
if you have formatted your document for an image writer and it's utilized all that space, when it goes to the laser printer, it's got to change your formatting. So let me show you a step-by-step procedure. As soon as you know what printer you're going to print your document on, if you'll go through this step-by-step procedure, then your formatting will remain intact no matter which printer you print it on. Now, as I mentioned, I'm going to take you through all the steps for any 3.02 people are out there, and you 4.0 people, it automatically skips a couple of these steps. So let me walk you through it. The first thing that you do when you know what printer you're going to use is go up under the Apple menu and go to Chooser. And when you open up Chooser, it will show you a little picture of all of the printers that you have installed in your system. Now, most of you will find an image writer, a laser writer. You may have an LQ printer picture or the icon for a Veritype machine or whatever you happen to have in your office. Now, all you do now is click on the printer that you're going to be using. So right now I'm going to be using a laser writer. So the minute that that happens, simply click on the laser writer. A little box will come up and say OK on it, and now close the box. Now, when the box is closed, now go under File and go to Page Setup. And when your Page Setup box opens, simply click on OK.
okay. Quick note. I had to look into this because in that chooser menu, I got curious and I'm like, okay, there's obviously preset drivers for different types of printers, much like really pain in the ass throughout the 90s and 2000s. You had you had to have different driver types for different name brands of printers, right? Like you think it would just be universal. You would think, okay, a printer's a printer. Um, let's just get the driver to align with it, right? It should just be mostly plug and play. Plug and play didn't really come out into Windows side until I think XP, give or take. Windows 98 SE that I worked with, you still had to install drivers, but then there was some pre-installed, but it was kind of limited. Again, I could be wrong recalling data, but with that said, you could actually add printers to that chooser window. The chooser was clever for its time. The icons you saw on the list were stored inside the driver file itself. When you dropped a new driver into the system folder, the chooser would automatically scan the folder, find the file, and extract the icon to display it to you. It was a very early primitive form of plug and play. So, um, the system folder, your system folder was essentially like a junk drawer of Mac. Every single system file, font, desk accessory, and printer driver lived in one single giant folder. Jesus. If you had 5 different printers in your office, you had 5 separate driver files cluttering up your system folder. If you accidentally installed 2 different versions of the same driver, the system would often get confused, leading to an erratic printing behavior or inevitably a classic system crash. If you're a power user, you likely spent a lot of time pruning your system folder, deleting drivers for printers you weren't using anymore just to keep the computer's boot time from creeping up. It's one of those hidden tasks that took up hours of a professional week back then. Um, that's nuts. Can you think about it? I mean, it sounds like it didn't even have subfolders. It was just one big folder with a bunch of files in it. Wow.
Now, in the new Word 4.0, you didn't have to go through that last step. I always do it just to make sure. What that basically does is you told the computer by going to the chooser which printer it was going to print on. Then you have to lock in that choice by going to Page Setup and saying OK. Now, the last step is to simply go to repaginate, Now, on Word 4.0, you don't
Paginate.
have to do that. It's repaginate now. It'll automatically go ahead and reformat your document. But for you 3.02 people, just simply go through the repaginate now. It will go
I have
through and
never heard that word.
reformat your document to fit those new parameters. So that's how you make it look good on the printer when it comes out. All right, our document's looking pretty good. The next thing that I want to go through is to show you how to set your default, how to set default. Now, what I mean by that is when you open up your computer, you will notice that it usually starts in Geneva. I never use Geneva, and I use Times, and so I always had to go up and up under Font, choose Times, and away I went. It also
So repaginate. nothing. I'd never even heard the word for. Um, it's a design quirk that still haunts Microsoft Word today. In Microsoft Word from 89 all the way to 2026, as of right now, the program does not define a page based on fixed abstract coordinates. It defines a page based on how the active printer driver tells it to render pixels. Are you kidding me? When you click repaginate word queries, the printer driver currently selected in your chooser or modern OS print settings, it asks the driver, what is the printable area? What are the default fonts you use? How do you handle kerning and the line height? Based on those specific driver answers, Word calculates where every single line of text must break to fit into the page. If you change your default printer from a standard office laser printer to a PDF maker or a different model, the driver's response changes. Because the driver's instructions are slightly different, the page breaks shift. That's why a document can look perfect on the computer and then suddenly have a straight orphan line dangling on page two. In 89, the computers were too slow to do this calculation continuously. If you were editing a 50-page thesis, you didn't want the machine to freeze for 10 seconds every time you typed a period. So Word offered a manual repaginate command. It was a signal to the engine, okay, pause everything, talk to the printer driver again, and recalculate the entire layout. The reason it's still a pain today is that Word is still tethered to the printer dependent logic, the PDF hack. If you've ever had a document that just won't stay formatted correctly, professional editors often change their default printer to Adobe PDF before they start working. By doing this, you're forcing Word to use a stable universal driver, the PDF driver, to calculate the layout, which prevents the pagination from jumping when you finally decide to print to a physical device. Didn't know that, and I use PDF printing a lot. I mentioned that earlier, so that's good to know. But it it's still tethered to the and again, printers, name brands, just ugh, all over the place. Even back then into today, it's still a pain in the ass.
So always started in 10 point. I wanted to start in 12, so I had to change that. There is a way to set your computer so that it'll always start in the format, in the style, in the font, and the size that you want. So let me walk you through that procedure here very quickly. First, go under Format, and you want to go under Format to Define Styles.
Oh,
Under
makes sense.
Format to Define Styles, and your Define Styles dialog box will open. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to set the normal style for your computer and for Microsoft Word, so click on Normal. So remember, your first step,
Clicking on
once you
normal
have
is not
gone
normal.
under Format to
Nowadays.
Define Styles, is to click on Normal. Now you look down and it says Font, Boston, 10 point, flush left. That's the normal setting. Now if you want to change that, simply go up under and pull your font menu down and select the one you want. I want Times. And I also want it to start in 12 point. Now if you'll look down, you'll notice it says Font, Times, 12 point, flush left.
You could even save your own.
Last step is to simply reach over and click on Set Default. And it will now set that default for you, okay? So let me walk you through that again very quickly. Go under Format to Define Styles. Open up your Define Styles box. Click on Normal. Then reach up under your font menu, pull down the font, pull down and select the font and the size that you want, and hit Set Default. You can always look down and it will list the ones that will tell you if you did it correctly or not. All right, let's cancel that out. Now, the next little feature I'd like to show you, which is available both on 3.0 and 4.0, is a great time saver, and that is called the glossary. Now, I have probably used the glossary more than almost any feature in Microsoft Word. A few years ago,
So he's about to come up on a story. Quick note. For most home users and small offices, a dot matrix printer, which is what I talked about earlier, which I kind of liked. The cost was anywhere from $139 to $675, which makes sense when you think about it because computers weren't in every home yet. They weren't in your pocket either. There was a corporate status symbol, which was a laser printer. They usually ran between $2,500 and $7,000. Ribbons and toner. Dot matrix ribbons were relatively cheap, but laser toner cartridges were massive, heavy, and cost hundreds of dollars to replace. If you wanted your document to look professional on a laser printer, you didn't use standard copier paper. You bought high quality, heavy bond laser paper, which was significantly more expensive. And that's insane.
I used to teach a class on raising self-esteem. I've met with many so-called successful people as I travel about, and I found that the basics of almost any success, whether that be in a marriage or as a child, as a parent, or academically or in a career, is what you think of yourself. So I used to give
It's true.
tests,
Yeah.
and at the beginning of the class, I'd give everybody an 18-question test that tested their self-esteem. Now, I had a 3-page kind of an analysis depending on how many questions you got right. So if I gave you a test and you got 6 right, I had to type out 3-page analysis. If you got 8 right, I had to type out another one. And I used to spend all my time after these classes typing out these analyses. I wished that I could have saved those analyses under a key, such as 2 right, 4 right, 6 right, and then whenever I type that in, call those up. Well, you can do that in Word. So let me walk you
Huh.
through the process of using
That's
your
a
glossary,
cool
which is a
idea to really get
storage
to know his
area,
students
which
more.
allows you to store something and come back and pull that out at any time by using a keyword. So let's go down and open up our glossary. Now, one of the things that I use the most in my documents, since most of the time I type letters, is I use my signature. Sincerely yours, Randall D. Smith, President. I'd like to put that in my glossary. So the first step to putting something in your glossary, now this can be 1 word or it can be 3 pages, it doesn't matter, is to simply highlight it. Now what you're going to do is you're going to come down under Edit and you're going to open up your glossary. So we open up our glossary. Now those of you in 4.0 will notice that there's a whole bunch of things already in your glossary. What I need to do now is give the item that I'm putting in my glossary a name, a keyword. Now this is my signature, so I will type in Randy. That's going to be the keyword. Then simply click on Define. Now that puts that in your glossary and gives it the keyword. Now let me show you how that works. Let me say I'm typing along in my letter. I get to the end. It's time for my signature. Now there's 2 ways of accessing the glossary. Let me show you the long way so you know how it works. I simply
Yep.
go up and
Clicking
open up
process.
glossary. And now I find my name that's in there and put insert. And there it is. Now, some of you might say, well, gee, it took you as long to do that as it would to type it. Well, if it had been 3 pages, that wouldn't have been the case. But there is a quicker way to do it. So let me get rid of this again.
Isn't it a
All
type
you have
command?
to do to access your glossary is to hit the Command
Yeah.
backspace key. Command backspace, and you'll notice down the lower left-hand corner, it now prompts you for the name. Type in the name, hit your return key, and there it is. Now, I will do that quickly now so you can see what a time saver that is. I get to the end, I hit Command backspace, type in the keyword, hit return, and there it is.
Oh,
And
look
you
at
can
that.
picture with a test where I was doing page after page, all I do is say number 3, and there'd be my 3 pages. Now, there are many uses for the glossary. Let's say if any of you that are watching the tape happen to be in education. Let's say that some of you do customer service letters, and let's say that you have to do a lot of customer service letters and you always
It's funny. This video is from 1989, right? And yet I'm learning things as we watch this that like I'm probably about to learn that I could use even today. Um, and I'm going to make a note of something that if I learn it, that's going to be useful in my own job, even from the basics back then. It's going to be interesting.
first paragraph's always the same. Dear customer, thank you for your inquiry. But then sometimes you have one of 3 different second paragraphs and one of 4 different third ones and then your name. Well, all you have to do now is put in the first paragraph and call that customer 1. And then second paragraph, that's customer 2 ABC, and type in each one of them, put them in your glossary. And the third one, call that, the one says thank you for your order, the other one says drop dead or whatever, and then the fourth one's your signature. Now picture this. It's time to type the letter. You simply hit your Command backspace key and put in first paragraph. And there it is. Now put in option B and third paragraph option C and signature, and your entire letter is typed, and you haven't typed anything in yet except the key words. So if you will utilize that glossary, you will find an amazing time saver, a great time saver in what you do. All right, the last item that we're going to cover in this basics tape on Microsoft Word is keycaps. Now keycaps, what that simply means, if you're familiar on your old typewriter, if you used to hit an L, you got an L. And if you hit the Shift L, then you got an uppercase L. So
Oh,
what you knew is that there were
shift
other
key,
items hiding underneath the keys.
lowercase,
Well, on your Macintosh
uppercase.
computer, you got all kinds of letters and symbols and little icons hiding under the keys.
Yeah.
So let's access those. First thing that you do is go under the Apple menu and open up keycaps. And that will show you a nice little keyboard. Now what that basically says is if I come along and I press an S, that's what I'm going to get.
I wanted a quick note here with the virtual keyboard. Um, I used a virtual keyboard a lot back when I was experimenting. I got my certification in PC troubleshooting. God, this was like 10 years ago. Um, and didn't have a keyboard. I didn't have an extra keyboard. This was mostly back on Windows. Was it XP? It might have been XP or Windows 7. One of those. Anyway, um, if your keyboard goes out or the driver malfunction or something like that, you could use the virtual keyboard, which was a handicap sort of thing that came up with the login screen, and all you had was your mouse, which you can't see because the green screen. Um, you could use the virtual keyboard, and all you needed was your mouse. You just bring up the virtual keyboard, the handicap tool, and I was able to use that to log in with my name. Um, so that came in handy, and this reminded me of that. So it's kind of a cool little note. Although, again, I could be wrong on the Windows versions I was working with, but that's one thing you can always do um, if you ever need like an on-screen keyboard.
Now the next step is to be sure to go under keycaps and select the typeface that you're in. Sometimes there are different symbols under different typefaces. Now I'm in Times, so I will select Times. Now as I look down at my keyboard, what that basically says is if I push a Y, I'm going to get a Y. Now, the next thing that I want to do is I want to hold down my Option key. Now as you will notice, when I hold down my Option key, the entire
Yeah,
keyboard changes.
this
That
is
says that if I ever go to my keyboard and I hit Option 2, I'm going to get a trademark symbol.
right.
If I get Option 3, I'm going to get, and I think that is the English pound symbol. If I hit Option 4, I'm going to get the cent mark. We've got infinity symbols. We have got registration marks. We've got a copyright symbol. By the way, if any of you ever want to use bullets in your documents, Option 8.
It's funny because when you play games like World of Warcraft online, you have these elite speakers that they will. It's really annoying because they'll use like elite characters in their names, like their character names or their key tags. And if you want to friend them or if you want to reach out, you've got to hit the certain control number plus the combination key. And it's if you know when you just want to message somebody. Thankfully, they added quality of life things later on, but early WoW, it was a pain in the ass because you had to learn the mapped variable for that key. And if you wanted to mess with them that way, or if they really wanted to fuck with you, they would, type in leet speak, like 1337 for the word leet, um, something to that regard. And it was like a symbol kind of thing, like I'm more technologically better or more advanced knowledgeably or knowledgeable than you kind of thing. But if you're just a moderate gamer, or if you just like chilling and playing, it's it's not really something you're worried about. But there were players that used and knew a lot of the key mapped hidden symbols that they could use in their name. One that kept popping up was the word Aether, and it had the I forget what it's called, but the combined A and E symbol, the letter A, letter E, and it's kind of hyperfused into each other. Um, and that's one that popped up every so often that the naming system allowed people to use. And anyway, as an online gamer, stuff like this to learn the key maps was crazy back then. I am totally zoning out. I am so sorry.
Is your bullet symbol. And you'll notice your little chevron down there that you'll use when you're doing mail merges, which we'll teach you in the advanced tape. And you've got the pi symbol and you've got check marks. Now, many programs allow you to, or many fonts allow you not only to push the option, but you can also push the option shift key and get an entire different group of keys. Now you'll notice that
Still the same
option
today.
shift K is the Apple symbol. Option shift O gives you a bigger null symbol, and right down here is a little symbol that I used to think was the California Angels, and then somebody told me that was the angstrom symbol. If any of you are using Spanish and you need the upside down exclamation point or question mark, you will also find those under your keycaps. So the keycaps will allow you many, and some of them, if you hold down your command key, will give you a different list. The only thing to be careful of is a lot of times you'll be looking for perhaps a little box to put into order blank. Many of the programs will show a box if there is nothing under that key. So be a little careful. If you see a box, a lot of times you'll type that and wonder why your box is not showing up. Last little item under keycaps that you may want to use is a lot of times you will want to put an accent mark if you are using, or the little two dots that you use in German. And you will not want that to be in a space by itself, but what you really want is you'll want that to be over a letter. So let me show you how to put an accent mark over a letter. All you do is hit Option E. Now when you hit Option E, you'll notice nothing happens. But now if you hit a letter, you will see that the letter appears with the accent mark over it. So let me do that one more time. Option O, for example, Option E, if you'll hit that and then hit the O, then that will put the accent mark over the O. And that is keycaps. Okay, that is the end of the Microsoft Word 4.0 Basics class. Here are just a few little concluding remarks that I'd like to make. I found some ironies in using the Macintosh computer and Microsoft Word. And that is basically everybody wants more speed. We have got very speed oriented. A
Even
few years
today.
ago, I remember I wanted to play better golf, so I went out and bought a new set of golf clubs. A few years back before that, I wanted to ski better, so I went out and bought new skis. And I
Yeah.
somehow had this strange feeling that if I kept buying new equipment, then I would get better.
Consumerism. And that is exactly how it's pulled in, especially in crony capitalism. It's a he's probably going to touch on it.
And so what I ended up being probably is the worst golfer on the course with the best clothes and the best clubs. And what I've noticed is we've got kind of that same little delusion when it comes to the Apple computer and the Macintosh computer. If you want more speed, yes, you can go out and buy you a new 2CX with an 80 megabyte hard drive and
Minimize
8 megabytes of internal memory, and you can
minimize
buy
the data
accelerator
usage.
boards for your SE, and you can do all kinds of things that will make difference in microseconds. But if you really want to get fast on a program, the best money that you can spend is on training.
Yeah, yeah,
You can
sure.
save hours by increasing your level of expertise. You can save microseconds by changing your hardware and your software.
I see what's he's right. He is very right because the more knowledgeable and the more expertise you have on something, the better and the faster you will be at it. With that said, he's also soft selling this if this is a purchased education set, he's soft selling the series that this was a part of. That's interesting.
I would rather have an employee on an old Macintosh Plus who had been to Mac Academy or who had sat down with these tapes and then went and practiced. I would rather have that than somebody on the latest equipment who just sat down
Didn't
and
know how
was
to use it.
basically, I saw an article the other day, and I remember the headline was the difference between knowing what you're doing and just messing around. And we have a lot of people that are basically just messing around on the computer. The best way to use this video, by the way, since I mentioned the computer works with pictures, they're concepts. And the best way to learn concepts is to see the concepts. Some of you, while you're watching this, may have your computer hooked up next to your TV set and you're going along trying to follow along. I wouldn't recommend that. Maybe this is too late to say it on the video. The best way to learn this is to sit back and
Little late.
watch this video a couple of times. Bring your friends in, bring the people you work with, and sit down and watch this. See the concepts happen, see it happen on the screen, then go and practice.
Now this is where I've gained some respect for Randy at this point in the video because he just introduced the idea of sharing the video with friends and family, right? Instead of saying what a lot of people probably would have said of like send them uh, show them how to purchase the video for their own library. Instead of like there's like a subtle soft sell um, at the beginning, but now he's saying share the video. So Randy, I mean, he needs to make a buck for a living, but at the same time, he realizes that knowledge is power, and so not only is he's not really giving a sale, but he's empowering the people that use the product and how they can help other people. So it's total respect for that.
A lot of people ask me about hands-on training. There's a problem with hands-on training. And by the way, hands-on training was created for the IBM. And the reason is that the entire focus of hands-on training is the keyboard on the IBM. You'll notice if you ever use one, you spend all your time looking at the keyboard. The focus on the Macintosh is the screen of the Macintosh,
Sure.
watching pictures, watching things, concepts happening. Best thing that you can do is to sit down and watch them happen. See them happen. Watch it a couple of times. Now, you also notice there's a little counter here on.
If I'm right, and I'll need to verify, um, I just want to verify before I say something. Okay, for most of the IBM PC users in the 80s, there was no mouse. It was all on the keyboard, knowing shortcuts, knowing all this and that. And obviously, that kind of expertise and knowledge can help. Um, it basically the mouse is non-existent. But with the Mac, you obviously have the mouse, and that's what he's saying, where it's again leads to that concept of everything happening on the screen because you need to see where the mouse is moving. You know, even even with finger memory on the keyboard, you'll know where everything's at, so you can keep contact with the screen, typing out and everything. But with a mouse, it's really hard to like you can't really look away and see like where the mouse is at. You might have like a general peripheral view and see like what's going on, but it's he's right. I mean, look at it the when the mouse was introduced, it was all about keeping your eyes on the screen a lot more than IBM back in the day. So um, that makes sense when you realize that IBM, what he's mentioning was mostly keyboard, rarely ever a mouse. But Apple totally changed that, so now you have the combination of mouse and keyboard.
On the bottom of the screen. That allows you to look at the back of the tape package, and if you want to find out where mail merge was, or if you want to find out how to do a glossary, or you want to find out how to use the ruler, you can look that up on the back of the package, and then you can fast forward your tape machine to that point and watch that over again.
Hmm.
We sincerely appreciate your business. Mac Academy has grown by leaps and bounds over the last 2 years. We train more people on the Macintosh than any other company in the world, for that matter. And the only way it has worked is that we have had some excellent customers who have enjoyed what we have taught them. They've gone back to their companies and they've said, hey, these guys do a good job. And they've sent them to our live Mac Academies or Mac Academy 2 on desktop publishing, or they purchase our videos. If you have any questions, there's a phone number on the back of the videotape.
We'll stop it there. I don't want to get into the business info, but I do want to look up something um, and see what happened to Mac Academy. This it's been a really cool video, a bit of a deep dive, very last minute stream, probably the longest stream I've done in 2026 so far, not gaming related. Um, so Mac Academy is essentially a relic of a past in its original form. The original Mac Academy, founded by the Florney family in the 80s, was built on the VHS to DVD training model. They were absolute kings of edutainment for the Mac, providing hour-long step-by-step. As the internet exploded in the late 90s, the videos training tape business model evaporated, obviously. Why pay $50 for a VHS tape when you could find a free tutorial on a forum or YouTube, for that matter, or a website? The company eventually transitioned into broader software training. It eventually faded away as the standard for learning software, moved from dedicated training companies to built-in help menus, YouTube tutorials, and interactive online courses. Um, Even though the company is gone, those tapes have become cult classics of retro computing enthusiasts. People archive and upload to YouTube specifically because they're a perfect time capsule for '89 office culture. They capture the exact moment when computers were becoming powerful enough to do serious work and still clunky enough to require. So, yeah, I guess that's what we're looking at. Anyway, it was really cool. This is there's a lot of ASMR qualities to these older videos. One of the ones that I tend to go to the most is an Apple presentation done by again one of the leading ladies in the Apple organization back in the 80s. And it really, I think it really talks about and it really shows, much like Jim and I has outlined during while we've been doing this, is, and something I've touched on is the evolution that humanity is going through technologically. Because again, we've touched on the impacts of how spell check or even a calculator impacted work roles, life, made people made things easier. A lot of people would argue, much like when the TV came out, that it'll make people dumber. But and AI may, for all intents and purposes, actually accomplish that in a lot of regards, because we'll become too reliant on it, much like we're too reliant on, you know, our phones or calculators, as it were. And but with that said, humanity does adapt too, and we learn eventually, and we're able to evolve. Most of the time for the better, sometimes for the absolute worst, and we devolve. Um, but I'm losing my train of thought here. But I think overall, I am technologically comfortable where we're at. I just hope that future generations education will continue to improve and will become smarter for it. It's really it's hard to express in words, but overall, I hope that you know technologically really does help humanity in the long run. AI is a big leap compared to this where we were. Um, and, we'll see. Maybe as of this recording, maybe it doesn't age well. Who knows? Maybe I'm naive to think that AI can empower humanity, but and I touched on this in other videos. The AI is a tool. It's something to be utilized. It's not like we touched on earlier. It's people are putting a lot of emphasis on it right now, but time will tell where it actually settles. I mean, again, just like the spell check example, companies made moves and changed jobs without even realizing that spell check really isn't what they thought it was. And it didn't do everything they hoped it would. So they had to roll back certain changes. You're going to see the same thing with AI. Currently, with the company I work for, I won't get into details, but there is a push for AI. There is fear going around about job impact, company culture, how it may change, how it um, may become more AI first. There's AI native instead of like humanity first kind of thing, and so it's putting a bad taste in people's mouths about technology, artificial intelligence especially. But it's historic for these things to happen, for this much change to happen and impact people and jobs. Um, and it's a transition period that is either going to be very good, very bad, or somewhere in between on both accounts. So, but you can't really black and white it because we're already in it and the cat's already out of the bag. So, somebody at some point thought, hey, the world is ready for AI. And I think for the most part, we kind of were, but in other regards, we weren't. But time will tell. Anyway, big shout out to Spiky and Random. I appreciate y'all popping in. If you're watching this as a video and you've gone this long, um, I appreciate you hanging out, listening to input. It's been a really cool reaction part of the series I've done. I've added to the reactions playlist. There is might be more stuff like this. I rarely do this because of potential copyright, but since this was published in '89 and it's basically now defunct, I've avoided the music. Um, it was fun. It was a fun little rabbit hole to go into, and I look forward to potentially doing it again. But we'll see. Definitely one of the more boring streams and one of the longest. Probably well, boring to a lot of people, not really to me. I actually really enjoyed it. I enjoyed looking at it like a time capsule and diving more into it, especially given the history of Mac and Windows. Um, um, and going from there. So anyway, remember, you're awesome. Never let the world tell you otherwise. Stay safe, stay sane, and I will see you next time, which will more than likely be a game stream. See ya. Boo.